Well, good morning all. It's 9 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Need a confirmation of the agenda, please. Jim and Barb, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest related to any item on today's special meeting agenda? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, you can declare it at any time. So we need to resolve into committee of the whole. The motion is there to do that, to discuss the 2025 draft budget and the recreation plans. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, thank you. Joan, second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Now we need to an appointed chair, although I've been doing that since we started. I don't know whether I should have or not, but anyway. Barb?
I would like to nominate Mayor Milne as chair of the committee of the whole.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Joan, thank you. Any discussion? Any other nominees? Volunteers? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, reports of municipal officers. Taylor is with us this morning. She's online. I know she had hoped to be here in person. I had hoped to see her, but nonetheless, it's good to see you on the screen. Taylor, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So I need a motion to receive Taylor's report and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions regarding the draft budget. Someone care to move that, please? Put it on the floor. Jason and Martin. Okay, Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just to start off with, as was my initial tradition last year, I did go ahead and buy a new pair of shoes this year. Unfortunately, I had to switch them out for socks this morning, but I will be getting use of those new shoes. And second of all, I just wanted to thank staff for helping me get through this process on mat leave. It has been no short of a challenge, and specifically I wanted to thank Jim and Kayla. They've been amazing support to me, and then also through the audit as well. So I just wanted to call them out for that. So we can get right into the budget. So this is a similar presentation to last year, as you'll remember, which was pretty different in years prior to that. So if we can go to the table of contents, Ollie. So this is everything we're just going to be walking through today, pretty similar to last year as well. In opposition to last year where I presented everything, I'm going to have all of the individual department heads present their own departments. I just think this is more appropriate since they can speak best to the goings on in their departments and answer best to that as well. And then as we go, I think we'll take questions per slide and per section, if that helps. So if you do have questions, just please interrupt at the time that I'm done the slide or at the time that the department heads are done the slide, so we don't have to flip back and forth. And if we can go to the timeline. So today is the first round presentation to council. The next will be March 5th. And then third round is the public meeting in the evening, March 19th. And then we aim for budget adoption by April 2nd. Okay, so overall budget impacts, this draft one is an overall blended tax rate increase of 7.3%. This year, 1% of the tax rate is equivalent to $192,299. So a significant jump from last year. This obviously means moving that needle a little bit takes quite a bit of work. So just if council can keep that in mind. And then, sorry, it's hard to see on that screen. Overall items similar to last year, insurance was an item of note. This year it has been budgeted to all of the appropriate departments. I was able to get the detail from the insurance company. Unfortunately, there is a 9% increase overall from last year. And then we have gone ahead and taken insurance out of finance and put it to administration. We did this with a few other items that, in my view, shouldn't really belong to finance. They should belong to administration because administration is kind of the overall of the administrative function of the township anyway. So we've continued with significant amalgamation of the general ledger accounts. This is the second year of that, which was highlighted in the 2022 audit, as you remember. So we, like I said, we moved a lot of administrative operating functions to admin, such as cleaning, utilities, and then this insurance I mentioned above. Excuse me. And then in this year, we went ahead and brainstormed an idea of how to reduce costs for Southgate taxation. So we came up with a rental expense that building and water and wastewater will owe to Southgate since they are user fees, but they do get the benefit of some of the taxation items such as insurance, such as some of the vehicle usages, the use of the buildings, etc. So we just wanted to charge a little bit of that back to the user fees, since taxation was covering it all. Any questions related to that, or we can keep going? Okay. And then so overall budget impacts and kind of uncontrollable items, the debt repayments are coming into effect in this budget at 627,000. So that is the majority chunk of the tax rate increase for this year at 3.26%. The police services increase, not the original draft, but the final draft ended up being 0.62%. Conservation authorities 0.17, and insurance premiums is 0.17 as well. So those are all items that are fixed in there. We can't go ahead and reduce those any further.
I have a question here, Taylor.
Yep.
Barb?
I thought I would ask it now rather than wait until the end on this particular one. The debt repayment for Victoria Street. We anticipate getting funding to only have to carry this for 1 year?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, the aim is to finish our audit ahead of the Infrastructure Ontario deadline, which is May 31st, to have the FIRs submitted to them to get an IO loan. So the goal is to get that audit done as soon as possible, and then we can refinance the CIBC loan.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'll pass it to Kayla for staffing and wages.
Morning, Kayla. Welcome.
Thank you. For the staffing and wages, this is the uncontrollable or the already approved. So the COLA step increases were approved in December. So that was an impact of 0.92%. The staffing additions is the Director of Corporate Services, which was also approved in December. The Administrative Customer Service Representative, which is a 2-year contract, was approved in December. And then the waste operator laborer 6-month contract is a leave coverage. So it is something that we have to have as uncontrollable at this point. And then these items were included in the proposed budget. So this is the transition, there's position changes. So the transition of a legislative coordinator to a deputy clerk, a waste team leader to lead hand, the public works manager to a director of public works and infrastructure, and the public works foreman and fleet manager to the public works manager. Those were identified through our organizational review. And same with the turning one of our seasonal roads into a full-time position. That was through the organizational review as well. And then the cemetery increased hours. This would be to help with some of the snow removal in Dundalk, as well as taking on a new cemetery. Additions to staff is just an additional seasonal patrol person, which we need in order for coverage for patrolling the roads through the weekends, and since it's 7 days a week, it does help to have that extra person, and they also help with sidewalks.
Okay, if we want to go to the next slide, if no one has questions. So essentially what we, like all staff have done, is present what we view as kind of a bare bones budget. This means we don't really have things in here that are wish items in the 7.3%. We have the items in here that we think are capital and operating crucial for 2025 operations. So given that, these are additional items that council could consider to add in. That would be over and above what staff thinks is crucial for this year. This is just a summary of everything, and then in each department slide, you'll see that these are kind of highlighted again, and then the department head will go over those items in greater detail than I provided here. I believe some of these items have already come to council as requests or suggestions, so I'll just go over them on a high level. So the Durham Hospital requested a grant. And I guess through our policy, we don't specifically give grants to hospitals. So they were requesting between $2,500 and $5,000, which would have an impact on the tax rate of 0.01 or 0.03 should we add it back in. The Southgate 25th anniversary celebration, budget under admin, I think we considered around 25,000, which would have a 0.13 increase on the tax rate. The bylaw department is hoping to replace their vehicle with a 4x4 vehicle. The majority of this being funded through reserves, 17,000 coming from taxation, which would be 0.09% increase on the tax rate. For fire, they were wanting a new compressor for around 50,000 at 0.26%. The library is hoping to get a new position for community outreach at an increase to the taxation rate of 0.3%. Recreation is proposing accessibility for the Swinton Park building at 50,000 with an increase of 0.26. North Wellington Aquatic Center, 1 year contribution at 50,000 for 0.26. Side Road 24 microsurfacing, around 209,000, which would add 1.09%. The replacement of the Holstein shed, sand shed rather, for 600,000 at 3.12, and waste garage overhead door replacement at 45,000 for 0.23. So if we added everything in, that would be an addition added to the rate of 5.77. So it would be just over 13%. If anyone has questions for that, or we can just go through them with the department head specifically. Okay, so on to my department.
Barb has a question.
sorry.
Sorry, Taylor.
That's okay.
So just on a couple of those items, we have actually granted hospitals funds over a commitment to capital or other. We actually supported the Durham Hospital in the past, as well as the Markdale Hospital, as well as, I believe, Mount Forest, their emergency renovation as well. So we have a commitment to support these hospitals because our residents need them. Many don't have doctors as well. So with the money that we haven't allocated from the donations, grants, and funds of that, so we have a 25,000 standard budget that we've already awarded to individual groups, but there was leftover. So has that been factored in? Can we factor that in to help alleviate some of this commitment to our neighbors, for especially hospital? But I mean, wow, 7.3 plus 5.77. I thought that was actually, anyway, I'll just leave that. Can you answer that question? How much was left in the donations, grants, and funds account?
I believe Kayla would have that since she did the report. I don't have that number specifically. I know there was we went under budget in 2023 as well, so that could be considered. I'd have to look at the GL to get the specific amount, but I thought it was.
Sorry, you can park that question and we can come back to it.
Yep. I can get that amount for 23 and 24.
Kayla's working on it.
Okay. Okay, so
Oh, I see Monica has a question. Go ahead, Monica.
Hi there. Just want to make sure my mic is working.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to ask a question with regards to services versus budget growth. The operating budget has increased by 16.8% from my understanding, and the capital budget has increased by 21.4%. So when we are looking at the proportional increase in services, or rather, if I were to form that as a question, are we seeing a proportional increase in services, or is this mainly covering administrative and inflationary costs?
I would say mainly administrative and
Okay.
inflationary.
So just to that point, how does this compare to past year's budget in terms of actual service expansion?
I think I'd have to lean on Jim for that because I don't have much history at Southgate, but I don't know
Oh,
if I
okay.
could answer to any of that, like capital wise, but I know our capital has grown significantly and will continue to grow. Probably in opposition to admin, like eventually that will level out, but because of the growth, we need to keep up with that. But I don't know if Jim has anything to add in that way, but
Jim, do you want to take a run at that?
Morning, good people. Well, the org chart review has put in some places for other positions that would be affected with this. As well as the trying to look at the slide. The road seasonal to a full-time. We did add another truck to the route this past year when we received it. So we've increased level of service for times that we can get out and reduce the routes. So there is an increase in snow plowing activity as level of service. And as mentioned before, just as in previous slides, the org review administrative changes.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Jim, for that. I guess the question that I'm just coming right out with is that obviously what many people might be thinking about, the blended residential tax rate increase is estimated, as mentioned, at 7.3%. And the proposed 18.1% increase in general tax levy is significant. I guess what it would come down to is just making sure that we have the services, because what's happening, or if you want to use the term beat on the street, is some people are thinking that we continue to have increase in taxes, but the services are not necessarily there. And I know things take time to build, but just with the climate of everything going on, it was a bit striking. So I just wanted to offer that, as I know we have a lot more to get through. But those are just my first thoughts. I believe maybe others maybe share the same.
Okay, thank you. Joan?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Taylor, just for these additional proposed items, these are just the amount that are proposed right now, and we're going to come back and discuss these after you
Correct.
go through your, okay, because
Yeah.
we can make changes on some of these. Okay.
yeah, absolutely. These are just kind of wish list items at this point.
Okay.
Yep. Jason?
I had the same, well, with the hospital there, 0.3%. If we give $5,000 to the Durham Hospital, everybody needs hospitals. You know, I want to keep the rate as low as we can too, but I think that's a no-brainer there to add that one. Going back to Jim's comment, I guess I had the same question as kind of Monica, only a different way. I've heard for years here now that growth's going to increase our tax base and we're going to have all this money. I guess I don't know who I'm going to ask. When are we going to have it? Because I get inflation. We're going to have to put the taxes up a little bit, but you know, people get offended here. Staff just keeps increasing. Building permits are way down. Snow removal is going to be a way up because the houses are all stuck too close together in Dundalk. I don't know. That's a planning issue. It's just when are we going to see the benefit of the growth to the we're a big township, and I know we're supposed to think all in one, but I don't know what this growth is benefiting the western part of the town. So I'd like an answer. When is the growth gonna pay for the growth? Because I don't think it does, but we always get told it does. I don't know who can answer that, but
Jim, do you want to give a high level, broad stroke at that, or someone else wants to volunteer?
Well, growth does pay for growth with development charges as far as getting the infrastructure in place. And that comes with increasing the level of service that's required as well. But that doesn't carry on as development charges. That comes on as the tax levy for the service increase. When will we see that? I'm not 100% sure on that. Right now, with capital needs for expanding growth, we are into projects that we have to critically follow through with for upgrades to get into those areas. I can foresee soon that we'll be out of those areas of the older section tying into a newer section, and those infrastructure costs being reduced out of what we would have to pay for other external on top to increase what activity has to happen with infrastructure. So I think we are seeing a finish line as far as tying in existing infrastructure into the new. And as far as the new development building on to the new development, that is in place with the engineering that's being inquired into right now and looked into for planning, that the infrastructure is right, that we don't have to go back into those roads to increase the pipe size because this subdivision's next door now. As far as level of service, we will be looking into that with asset management plan as well and determining where we need to be for level of service. We hear all the time about snow plowing. You're not out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, what we are, that's when we start, but we aren't at every road at every time. So is that level of service going to increase that we are out on the roads at 12 o'clock at midnight? And that's where we're probably heading in some roads for sure, to bring up that level of service, because it is also tied in with the minimum maintenance standards. So there's other things that catch up that we need to bring that level of service into play. The growth right now is catching up with, it's the impact piece that's a little bit behind as well. That, there will be some other increases foreseen as well eventually with those updates from MBAC. And that's, I might need a little bit of help with that with someone else if they understand that a little bit more, but that's my understanding. So to answer your question, a definite time frame. I think like some of those things are coming off the list, but with the growth, we will have to carry on. With the snow comment and currently with our situation this year, this is why we built in a number of years ago the winter maintenance reserve. So some of those years where our operating costs have been lower than what was expected, we've put that into reserve to take the bumps out of the road. And that's what we're going to be dealing with this year. We're coming in at the number we've presented with the budget. The bump in the road with going into this snow removal on all streets in Dundalk basically will be taken out of that winter activity reserve. So we've come a long way, because years ago we didn't do that, and that would have been a hit now today. So I don't know if that got you any further, Jason, but that's.
yeah, no, I wasn't, appreciate your answer. I don't think anybody has an answer when it's going to pay for itself. I don't know. It's just, yeah, kind of like Monica said, I don't really see the level of service increasing. I guess, I don't know, leave it at that. I appreciate you trying to answer it anyway.
Thank you. Ken, I see your hand up on screen.
Yes, good morning, your worship. Just to add, and try to assist Jim, there is a lag time that happens between the planning work that goes into establishing the regulatory framework, so the zoning and policy changes, approvals of subdivision plans, then construction of infrastructure, and then getting buildings on the ground. But Jim is correct. MPAC is basically one of the key points that is lagging because the province has held MPAC from doing a major review of assessment information. So there's likely years and years of assessment changes that haven't been occurring quite to the extent that they should be at MPAC. And it will be interesting to see whether or not that is actually allowed to proceed. Because what'll happen is if that doesn't occur and only limited amounts of assessment-based growth occur, then at some point when that complete review is done, there'll be years of growth in that assessment base for all municipalities that will suddenly occur because it's being held. But that's sitting with the province at this point.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, I'm gonna allow Barb to ask her question, but I don't want to get too far off stream here. We want to bring it back to the budget. Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of brings it back because MPAC has been mentioned a number of times, and you know, people are terrified of when that new assessment comes in because people are paying. We got an email from a resident. She pays $7,000 in Dundalk, Victoria Street upgrades. Is that area rated to water and wastewater? Like, is the whole township paying that debt repayment for upgrades to a water and wastewater system? The wastewater upgrades that's in the budget, we'll get to it, but MPAC, from what they've told us at conferences, is that even though the assessment comes out, we only need to collect so much. And once that assessment comes out, it doesn't necessarily mean that the taxes are going to triple. Although a resident called me on the weekend that lives in rural, to Councillor Rice's point, built a new house, got rid of the old farmhouse, but his taxes have gone up 3 times in 5 years, like 3 times the original amount when he had an old farmhouse. But the services haven't changed. Still only gets garbage, still only gets plows, still gets snow plows and grading. But they're terrified of when MPAC actually does come on board and how that's going to affect them, because we can't pass on a 13% tax hike. People just can't afford it right now. So we'll see where we land and what we can look at, but the future of the property taxes is inherently flawed with the province, and the downloading that occurs to the county and to the municipalities, like conservation authority, municipal assessment, it's flawed. But our hands are tied. So where do we continue to deliver the services, or what services are we prepared to give up? I guess is the big question. Thank you for my soapbox.
We could debate philosophically for days here, whether we're getting a good deal or not. But I think what we need to do, or I would propose we do, is continue on through the budget, then come back to these additional proposed items and debate each one individually, whether you want to add it, whether you want to take it out or leave it out, or in fact, there may be other things that you want to take out as we go or add in. So with that, Taylor, would you carry on, please?
Can do. Okay, so back to finance. So total operating budget for this year is going to be 839,000, an operating decrease of 82,873. The reason why there's an operating decrease is the second point, that insurance was taken out of finance and moved to admin. So this is kind of a wash. You'll see that increase in admin. This year we have 65% of the Director of Corporate Services added. an increased revenue of 21,000 related to tax sale administrative fees for properties in significant arrears. 28,000 is also moved to admin, so that's a decrease here. We've added $62,000 for the asset management plan, which is largely funded through gapping dollars in wages for both me being off and the director of corporate services not starting yet. This year, there's an increase in postage that's quite significant, so we have $15,000 added for that. $10,000 related to general AR write-offs, and an increase to the audit fees based on the agreement with KPMG and the FIRs added. For capital, there's $3,000 for computers, and then again, the Durham Hospital request. I just wanted to clarify with this Durham Hospital request, based on how I received that information, was that they applied for a grant through the regular grant process, and that's why I said that we didn't give to hospitals. I didn't mean that we don't give to hospitals, period, but I just wanted to be clear on that point. If anyone has questions for finance.
Don't see any for now.
Oh, Monica.
I have a quick one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Monica.
Thank you, Chair. So just kind of like coming off of what we were just discussing and now speaking on to finance, I think this might be a good place to ask this question. How are we ensuring that the equity and how tax dollars are allocated across rural and urban areas are basically like being equalized? Because I do understand some of the comments that were made that maybe some places are benefiting more, and I know there's a season for things. However, based on all of this, is there a way to have better understanding how the tax dollars are being spread across like rural and to the urban area?
Well, it would depend on their tax code, like whether they are R1 or agricultural or industrial. So that's how kind of the spread happens, which that percentage is based at the county level. They assign those numbers. So we have no purview on how to change that. We could make suggestions, but their tax policy is what we base our taxes on.
Martin.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I got a bit of a throat here. Taylor, 65% of director of corporate service. What does that mean?
So since that position will be over clerks and finance, the majority of that was chosen to be over finance, and then 35% of that will be over clerks.
So what would that amount, what would that amount be?
I think Kayla had that in her wages slide. If Kayla, you can answer that question.
I just had the lump sum in the slide. I can get the number though.
Okay. And a follow-up.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. 62,000 asset manager. Is that to pay for a consultant or what is that?
Yes, that's the third-party service.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Carry on, please.
Okay, next I'll give it over to Kayla for admin.
Kayla, please.
Thank you. Majority of the increase for the operating year over year would be that the insurance moved from finance into admin, as well as things like cleaning and utilities for the administration office. We did offset some of that by adding the revenue, as Taylor mentioned, from the building department as a rent, just so that some of that was covered by user fees. In addition to that, there is an increase in the legal fees just for ongoing litigation. For the capital budget, there's money in there for computers and office furniture. Again, the office furniture would be for the administration office as a whole. And then the multi-use facility master plan and the master service delivery review would be carried over from last year. 2024, we didn't do that, and it's coming from reserves. The additional item for consideration is the Southgate 25th anniversary celebration. There was a report that proposed 25,000. It wasn't approved. It was just recommended to put as a recommendation for this budget. So that's what that is. So it's not currently included in the budget.
Correct. Thank you. As I said earlier, we'll come back to that list and we can debate each one individually as we want to see done. So I don't see any other questions on, oh, Jason, you have a question on administration? Go ahead.
With the 80,000 in the multi-use facility master plan, we had that in there last year to spend that on, so we didn't spend that, right? But we're planning on this year. That's okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thought that's what it meant, but
So both the 80,000 and the 60s
that's what-
are in the reserves. We've already allocated that money. Jim, please.
Yeah, just on that note, since you hit on the use facility, and obviously we've done the land transaction for that, where that build may be. I think this is a point where we need to get that foundation of that plan and concept of what we are looking at. Now, it might not be next year or the year after, but I think to get that plan in front of council and in front of the public to see what that may look like is a big stepping stone for this. As well, just recently, we applied through an application from Climate Ready Infrastructure Service, and we've already been pre-approved. And this is to help, even though it's just an idea right now and a concept for this admin building and the other amenities to tie in with it. But this is to look at green infrastructure for this build, climate resiliency. So all this for this new facility and this application we've been approved for is all free service. So there's no cost tied to it. So we'll bring a report to council. They've sent back a work plan on what the ideas would look like. But again, this is the experts helping us design the future of this building with all these ideas of energy management, storm water resiliency, all those concepts into this, and that's free of charge to the municipality. So I think that's a win for us and will help us move forward with seeing what this building should look like.
Thank you, Jim. Jason, go ahead.
I think I asked it last year. I don't think I got an answer. I know I didn't get an answer. So say we spend this 80,000 this year, and in a year or two, council decides we're not going to build this building. It seems like a pile of money to me to just a concept. Like I'll sound like a buffoon here. Imagine when they built this building, they didn't have 10,000 back in the day to figure out what we're going to plan. And I don't know, it just seems a crazy amount unless we voted on it and say, hey, we're building this thing, we're just going to throw this money at it. I don't know. I don't know.
So did you have a question or is that?
Oh, just a comment.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. That's
We
fine.
haven't
Yep.
locked this thing down. So.
No, we have not. Okay. Kayla, please.
If you don't mind me looping back just to
No,
the Director of
please.
Corporate Services, for the Finance Department, it's 82,000. That's wages and benefits together
That's the total position
for finance.
for finance. So
and-
that's 65 for finance, 35 for
No,
admin.
82
or
for
clerk,
finance and 44 for clerk.
Clerks. Okay, thank you for that, Kayla.
If I may, Brian.
Yep, go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, excuse me, with the Jim brought up a point that I was going to ask, and kind of going back to Jason's comment on DCs. If the multi-use facility building is primarily that, and you know, being a theater, being this, and maybe having a library satellite there, like doesn't DC pay for soft infrastructure? And would there be grants? As Jim said, there is a grant, but could we look into that a lot more? And also, could it be funded a certain amount from the DCs to bring that down? Because certainly the provincial government gives money out to people for doing their studies. I was just wondering if there's any more grants and if DCs are possible. I don't know if that could be answered or not, but
Jim, please.
The administration part for DCs is not eligible. We cannot charge DCs on the admin. Now, we can tap into a recreation service. We could tap into fire service, those other services, but administration is not DC eligible. Yeah, for sure, we'd be looking for a grant when we're at that time. But again, without having an idea of what this might look like, we're just still throwing darts at the wall. So.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Jim. Okay, Taylor, move on to, are you finished with admin? Or Kayla, are you finished with admin? Yes, okay. So planning is next?
Yep, so it'll be Ken.
Yep. Ken?
Thank you, Your
Please.
Worship. The operating budget proposed for planning is 235,000 and change, as you can see. The bulk of the increase is to recognize the transfer of the planning coordinator from clerks over into planning, and then to right size the budget for the director position full year. Much like the other departments, the director position is spread out, so portions are taken from planning, economic development, building, and recreation. Other than that, just minor increases to training, conference, and mileage to recognize that there are now 2 full-time planners that have professional development requirements.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, not seeing any questions. Economic development, Brenna.
Yes, so we're looking at the 62,000 increase year over year, including the portion of the Director of Development and Community Services, just accounting for 2 summer students. And then again, we're going to do Communities in Bloom for 2,500. That's not a change, it's just a note. And then we've increased our advertising and promotions by 1,700, just to account for getting some images and videos of our local areas for a Shop Local campaign, and that would be like fund matching through another organization. And then finally, we just have highlighted that we are trying to aim for 45,000 of CIP projects approved by council. So again, that funding is already available in the reserves.
Thank you, Brenna. Not seeing any questions at this point. So we'll move on to clerks. Lindsay, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Milne. Large part of the increase here was our percent of the Director of Corporate Services, changing one position from Legislative Coordinator to Deputy Clerk. We did have the reduction in removing our Planning Coordinator. That's now shifted over to 100% planning. A bit of an increase in our software. The software here, that's website, eScribe, Voyant Alert, a lot of those software, so a bit of increase there. We did a reduction in our conferences to try to level some things out. With our capital budget, website migration that happened fall of 2024, that was approved by council in August of last year, so that's reserves. And council just more recently approved our clerks on call procedural bylaw project that is ongoing right now. I think that's the highlights.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Barb?
Thank you, through you, Lindsay. The reduction in miscellaneous revenues cloud permit. Can you explain, like, we're not getting additional revenue because we've moved over to cloud permit?
No, so
Thank you.
Taylor might have to jump in. I believe this was just moved from me, or Phil might have to jump in here. We're not getting rid of cloud permit.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you. So I believe that one is the planning module
Oh,
that we have gotten rid of. The building still goes through the cloud permit.
Okay,
So initially there was a planning module included. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. It hasn't been used. We just use cloud permit for building and bylaw. So that's been taken out from what Phil is saying.
Barb?
so the revenues is what we had anticipated receiving as a result of using a software we didn't use? Like, that's where I'm confused. How is it revenue
It's
if we're
because
eliminating the usage?
we're not paying for it anymore for that module.
All right, so it's an expense.
No,
Sorry,
that
that's
was the
where I'm,
revenue.
I don't know. You'll have to explain, Taylor. I don't-
Sorry, I can't remember the details specifically, but that was a revenue for the startup of Cloud Permit. No? And building and clerks were supposed to get a split of that revenue for the first year.
We'll have to look into this one
Okay.
Yeah.
before round 2, because I'm not.
just seems more
100%
like
sure.
it would be an expense than a revenue, but I'll
Yeah, we'll mark that down. to
Table
look
that.
into. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Lindsay?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, not seeing any questions for now. Moving on to operating and budget or capital budget for council. Lindsay, is that you're taking that? one?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Essentially the increase here, you'll see we didn't used to separate out the cleaning and contracted services for council specifically. So those are now under this budget. And the reduction in training last year, we did the waterworks training. I can't remember what it's called right now, but we did that last year. This year, we reduced it because we're doing training with the clerks on call procedural bylaw review, so we don't anticipate any further training for council. And in the capital budget, we increased our election reserve contribution and defibrillator for council chambers. That was a recommendation from our health and safety committee that there isn't one in this building, or sorry, this side of the building.
Thank you, Lindsay. Barb?
just a question about our conference budget. Where did we land on that with everyone choosing their conferences? And I have instructed Holly that I won't be going to OSUM, so I won't be selecting a third conference.
Okay. We can bring an updated line item for it. Just the way we changed the policy, it's now kind of included. So I don't have the exact number of where we landed, but if council wants to see that in phase 2, we can certainly provide that.
Barb?
I would like to. It helps us understand where we might be able to save in the future. I'm having a hidden line item where we don't understand what we're spending our money on, or the taxpayers' money on, is difficult to explain and support. So I'd like to see it if it could come back in
Sure.
the second phase.
Sure.
Okay. Annika?
Yes, thank you. Just through you, Chair. With regards to the laptop technology issues, I had a major one last year that pretty much put me out almost for a very long time. I would probably even say almost 2 months. And I know staff was trying their best to get that remedied. What part of this budget will help to ensure that my understanding from the feedback I received was that essentially we didn't have either enough resources to have the technology fixed, or the loaner that I also received didn't work. So I wasn't able to do some of my duties, and I missed out on a lot of things because things weren't updated, and that information wasn't shared by others. So was there a way to find in this budget that there will be a focus on ensuring that technology remedy, whatever that would be called, is included?
I'll turn that over to Kayla.
Kayla, please.
Yes, thank you. At the end of 2024, council had approved for us to use some money that we didn't spend for, I can't remember off the top of my head now, towards technology. So we have upgraded some of our technology, and we also have some spare laptops now that we can easily swap out.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Alrighty then. Oh, Jason, go ahead.
Just on the, I know it's only $4,000, the integrity commissioner, do we pay them a retainer, or is that's just for work they've done, this 4,000, is it, or is that?
So we pay a yearly retainer
what
of
I thought.
1,200 and change, and then each time that someone contacts them, it's a fee as well. So we have monthly invoices, just depends how many times they're contacted. Yeah, I'm estimating 4,000 just based on last year's.
Okay. Joan, go ahead, and then Martin.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lindsay, did we use all that was budgeted for last year? Did we use all of that for the integrity?
Yeah, okay.
I believe we were over budget. Not by a whole lot, but we also included training last year with the integrity commissioner. But this year it's just split out a little bit differently. It all was under clerks last year. So I believe we were a bit over budget last year with integrity commissioner services. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Lindsay, with the 15,000 to election reserves, is there a specific line item election reserves because it is council and it is the process? Like, is it mandated by municipal act or could that money, like the 4 years, could that just come from general reserves? Because there's how many hundreds of thousands in general reserves, or is it because it's something to do with the municipal act? Just
So maybe Taylor can elaborate, but this is a contribution to our reserves. It's just split out under council because it's specifically for the election. Taylor, I don't know if you want to
Okay,
elaborate.
so it's the general reserve fund with a subline of council, I guess.
Exactly. I think there are
Okay.
quite a few items like that, like Jim's winter maintenance reserve. We just put into the specific funds since they have specific uses, almost like an obligatory reserve where it has a specific use it can be used for. We don't want to use these funds for anything else than the election.
Okay, thank you, Martin. All right. Anything else, Lindsay, on that one?
Nope.
No, nothing for now. Moving on to building, operating and capital. Bill, are you taking that one? Please?
Yes, Sam, thank you, through the chair. Just with it, there's the 196,820 year-over-year increase. There has been a lower number of permits than previous years, which is not much anybody can do with interest rates. 20% of Director of Development and Community Services, 70,000 for legal fee for increased litigations, 20,000 for building fees and charges study. We haven't had one since 2019. 20,000 contributed to the partial funding of the multi-use. 13,600 for rent from building to the South Gated Min. Gas and oil for the vehicle, 6,500. 5,800 for insurance and 5,000 for contract fees. Capital replace the vehicle. It is overdue, and 5,000 for laptop and tablet. And I just want to mention that it has a $0 impact to taxation. It's all funded through building permit fees.
Questions? Jason?
Phil, the legal fee, 70,000, increased litigate, what kind of fee, like, is that for just a general?
So there has been an increase of 70,000 for legal fees due to COVID was a big factor in that. Previous lawsuits have finally just came to fruition.
Any other questions? I have one question with regard to the partial funding of multi-use facilities. So of the 80,000 under admin for the master plan for the multi-use facility, 20,000 of the 80,000 is being a contribution from building?
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Phil. We'll move on to bylaw and K9. It's you again.
Thank you, through you. The increase of 127,544,000. The 20% of Director of Development Community Services, 58,000 legal increased litigation again. The 24,500 contract services. Capital for 4,500 for a car radio and repeater. That was brought to our attention by the Health and Safety Committee for the bylaw vehicle.
Okay. Questions with regard to the bylaw section of that page? I'll turn it back over to the mayor. We are just the bylaw section.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding that? Oh, Barb, go ahead.
So through you, thank you, Phil. Would this be considered, and maybe Taylor, an increased level of service, obviously, because we're getting more and more calls for, property standards that require litigation. We have, and I mean, when we get into the canine piece of it, I'm sure you're going to elaborate on parvovirus and the number of dogs at large. This to our earlier question is definitely an increased level of service, because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we didn't have a dedicated bylaw or canine enforcement, plus parking. So I'll put that on the table, and Phil, you can address it as we go through that page. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to canine. Bill?
Yes, thank you. Through you. And there has been an increased level of service as there are more and more. The population is growing rapidly and there are more calls, and the service has increased significantly. With the canine, there's a 16,000 increase year over year. $14,000 for canine contract. That's MSS. And again, the pound service of 5,000. And this is all to do, as Barb said, the lot of dogs running at large. This parvovirus has increased the cost significantly with the pound fees, and again, the replacement of the vehicle, and that's for consideration as it's an older vehicle. And
Barb?
So just to the pound service and the parvovirus, that the requirement to hold animals that have not been that you can't prove if they've been vaccinated or if they have parvovirus for 10 days before they can actually move out to a shelter. Is that legislated, or is that a best practice?
yes, thank you. As far as I know, there is no adoption center will take a dog unless it is quarantined for those 10 days.
Okay. No more questions for now. That Barb?
Right. Again, it's canine. So the number of dogs that are being impounded that don't have or have parvovirus because they haven't been vaccinated, are they licensed?
There have been some that the MSS has received that have been registered through the township. There are some that have not been.
But don't we require proof of vaccination when licensing dogs, or is this a separate vaccination?
So I believe that the vaccination didn't cover this parvovirus. It's a complete separate.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Phil. Oh, Monica, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's okay. Okay, so definitely, it's great to see that in the budget in terms of actual service. I do know that there are still quite a few concerns about dogs, running wild a bit all over. I know we're in a rural area, but also in the urban, there's a lot of complaints of people walking their dogs in areas where they should be on leash. And also with a lack of a dog park, which I've been hoping for a long time to have something like that established, which we could look at in recreation at time, to have a specific place where people can have their dogs off leash. But there is continuous concerns of the response rate and just generally that I guess you could say enforcement or education awareness to make sure people keep their dogs on leashes, and then dogs just kind of going all over, and other animals as well. So that was, I guess, a comment there. I do understand that there's a $16,000 increase in the canine budget, if I reviewed it correctly. could you just kind of identify high level, what specific factors have justified that sharp increase? Which I think I just mentioned, I know that there's a need for it. So just wanting to have a better understanding of how that will manifest further into having enforcement in the area.
Bill?
Yes, thank you. So it is an increase due to the number of dogs and complaints we are getting, and there's an increase in the contract with MSS through our K9.
Sure, go ahead.
So one thing that I've observed in the new developments is the lack of backyards, like fenced yards. And responsible dog owners license their pets, vaccinate their pets, and keep their pets contained. It's the dogs that people just let out and without a fenced yard. I mean, this isn't our responsibility to fence someone's yard, and I doubt very much that the developer is going to fence the yard either. That's usually a property owner's. But when houses are in close proximity and dogs are just let out the door, as I said, responsible dog owners do their part. I guess maybe it's education and fines for those who let their dogs at large. But I know we only have one individual patrolling or called out. It's by complaint. You know, there's a dog at large and then the dog's not there. So, you know, short of having someone patrolling the streets, picking up dogs, that I'm not sure that we'd get the revenue to cover the cost.
Jim, sorry.
I'm going to get Ken to speak on our behalf here, but the team has been involved lately with MSS, and it was through the RFP process, but we are bringing forward a contract with MSS and some of the details that we our coverage and stuff. So maybe Ken can elaborate a little bit touch on that.
Ken?
Yes, through your worship, we have been actually working to put the contract together because due to staff turnover, if council will recall, there was an RFP for K9 service in spring of 2024 that was awarded to MSS. Since then, no actual contract has come to council, so we've been negotiating with them for the K9 control element, but also the bylaw enforcement element, which is part of that RFP. So included in that is a recognition that the service that is provided for K9 is a priority service, meaning that if a call is received related to a K9 matter, whatever it is that they're dealing with, they will drop that matter and prioritize us for that call. And so that's part of the contract that will be coming forward. I would note that the number that we've noted here in the budget is an estimate, because at the time we didn't have the financial details of the contract fully realized. We now are pretty much there. So we underestimated on K9, so that will need to be adjusted up, but we overestimated on bylaw enforcement, so it should be generally balanced out. We just need to shift some of that around. But you will be seeing that at the next council meeting. I would also just loop back to a question related to the vaccination requirement. Under the current K9 bylaw that council passed last year, the vaccination requirement is only specific to rabies.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Jason and then Monica.
Going back to the K9 contract, I guess I don't know who to ask. Are we happy with their services? I've had a couple of calls. They've called about K9 after hours and they say they're not coming out at dark. Kind of seemed a bit strange to me, but are we happy with their services, and how much of an increase are we looking, or is that the increase here, this 14,000 with the upcoming contract?
Who wants to take that?
Maybe I'll start, your worship, and then Phil can jump in. When we were trying to finalize the numbers so that we could proceed for today's meeting, as I mentioned, these are estimates, so we didn't actually have the finalized contract numbers. We do now. We were off on the canine number and the bylaw number, but we were too high for bylaw and too low for canine. So basically, we'll be shifting those numbers around a bit to deal with those. So generally, it should be a wash in the end. And I'm sorry, I missed, I probably suggest that Phil could respond to the service question.
Yeah, the concern about the service level. Phil, do you maybe speak to that, please?
Yeah, thank you. With the service, I can't really speak to that as I haven't heard any complaints about the service. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I haven't received any complaints about it.
Okay.
So they're not dog catchers, is that right? Like the two complaints I had is there was a complaint about dogs numerous times, and this company said they're not coming out unless the person that the dog was on their property contained the dog. It's kind of, so if they're not dog catchers, or I'm not sure.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you. And no, they do not take a dog, and neither our bylaw officer will not impound a dog if it is not contained.
And is that standard practice, Phil, for most service or most canine services?
I believe so, as MSS does a lot of contract for a lot of different municipalities, and I believe it's the same.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, we'll be looking at that contract when it does come to discuss that further, I'm sure. Any more questions on bylaw and canine? Oh, Monica, sorry, go ahead, Monica.
Yes, that's okay. No problem. So just in this discussion, when we're looking at the Line Fences Act, I just thinking from a point of view of preventative measures, not just one, but several inquiries that came to me was with regard to Line Fences Act. My understanding is that both residents have to agree if they want to put a fence up. And if one doesn't, then the cost would fall on to the person who is requesting it. With the times that we're in and with people having dogs and a lot of dog issues, neighbor tensions, and this enforcement costs and dogs getting out, would there be a consideration of incorporating fence cost sharing incentives into future budgets to support residents while alleviating municipal enforcement expenses?
That's a question fraught with all kinds of details. The devil would be in those details. It probably is a case of be careful what you wish for. If you had two property owners in the rural areas that didn't get along, you might be incentivizing somebody to build a fence around a 100-acre farm as an extreme example. Monica?
So, yes, just to thank you, Mayor, for that clarity. So what I was thinking was more in the close areas. So not necessarily like the farm specifically, but a lot of the questions were coming more from the urban area, where obviously the houses being closer together. And you're absolutely right, Mayor. In the farm, it's a different situations. But there are some cases where dogs are alleviating themselves on the neighbors. Dogs are getting out. Different breeds of dogs carry different characteristics. People have small children. It's just like a pile. And you're right. It's a whirlwind rather of different scenarios. But a preventative measure could be to help people have a cost sharing or some kind of incentivized way of being able to put the fence up, because yes, it does fall onto the owners. However, we're seeing enforcement costs that have gone up $16,000. And then other issues that are happening is kind of leaving neighbors who cannot afford the $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 to put up a fence, to kind of leave the borders open. And then it's just, I think I heard this one, that good fences make good neighbors, something like this. So it's just with that idea. So I was just wondering if that would ever be a consideration. I've been thinking about it for the past year. And of course, pilot, small area, try it out, this type of idea. But would that be something that would be considered, if that's something to ask at this point or later. It's just something I wanted to share, just thinking specifically about this section.
Jim?
Well, I think the responsibility lies on the dog owner. Like, if you don't have a fenced in backyard or yard of any sort that way, then you need to contain that dog on a leash or another means. It's not the responsibility of the township because you have a dog to look after your dog for you. $16,000, that would maybe be one or two backyards perhaps, depending on what type of fence or whatever. That would be chewed up pretty quick. I don't see that's an avenue unless council wants to pursue that as council as a whole or whatever, but I don't think that's something that staff would bring back as a recommendation. It's like if you want to save water because you want to save on your water bill, well, we'll give you an incentive to buy a low flush or toilet or something, but to put up a fence for someone as a taxpayer footing that bill, I don't think there's much appetite for that, but that's my opinion.
Thanks, Jim.
Just a follow-up.
Yep, go ahead.
Real quick. Yeah, thank you, Jim, for that. Definitely, I've had 4 dogs and other animals. We 100% responsibility falls on the owner. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So then enforcement costs will go up because calls will come in and tensions will rise. So definitely not want to take care of other people's responsibilities at all. Just trying to kind of, look at different avenues and options that have come to me from residents that they're facing this kind of issue. And then with the cost of living and putting up a fence, 16,000 probably be eaten up on a rural farm, but I think I was hearing quotes anywhere 1,500, 1,000 or 2,000. And I'm not saying for township to pay for it completely or pay for it at all, but possibly even if there was a possibility to see how this is what has been brought to me, is there a way that we could, after a period of time, see if the neighbors are not agreeing to it, if there was a way that something could be explored that will maybe even enforce, or, I mean, that's not popular, I know. Some people be like, well, why should I put up a fence? If I can't afford it, I can't. Like, I just see it a growing concern and just trying to be proactive about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica, but I'm going to suggest that if someone feels strongly, and obviously you do about this matter, that if a notice of motion was to come forward at a council meeting to direct staff to bring back a report, then that would be entertained for sure by council.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm more strong about residents' concerns. It's not really a personal thing. This is more, I feel strongly about what residents are bringing to me. I might have a different view of this personally, but I'm just speaking from the point of what's been brought to me by residents, and you're absolutely right. I think they have written in. So yeah, I could take that back again to them.
Okay, thank you. I see Joan's hand up and then Martin. Joan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say point of order. I think we're moving away from the budget and more into K9. This is something that we can talk about, but I think we should get back to the budget if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yep. No, fair enough. Martin? Oh, Martin seems to have frozen. I know it's cold out there in Proton, but we'll come back to Martin if he reconnects. All right, so we'll move along then, unless there's any further questions regarding bylaw or K9. For now, anyway. Not seeing any, we'll move on to fire and emergency management. Chief Melnick, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, half of this increase is due to insurance coming over from finance to fire. We have an increase of equipment and supplies. Just over 8,000 out of that 13 is for, we received a grant for cancer prevention. So we're getting a drying rack for our bunker gear, which came in around $11,000. So we have to pay the difference for that. And just the cost of supplies are going up. $7,000 in bunker gear maintenance. So bunker gear maintenance has increased over the years with more calls. But we also noticed maybe some of the quality of the gear that we've been buying isn't the greatest. So we have switched manufacturers as well to try and help that out. And with that, we are doing a bulk buying with Grey Highlands, Meaford to get the cost down on that. And then $2,000 we have for internet, for data and iPads with NG 911, which I'm assuming everyone has heard of probably by now. Dispatch is able to send responders videos from the 911 caller, updates, pictures of the scene. So for our staff to be able to actually use that data, we need something to receive it in our trucks. And that's also going to help with our ERGs for electric vehicles. So every electric vehicle now has basically a printout that can be accessed through a tablet to show our responders where the battery's at, where the hazard zones are, so we can keep our crews safe. And then when we get into the capital budget, we have some contribution to reserves, 28,896 for the rescue truck. That was when we purchased the new tanker. We had $20,000 that we budgeted for the sale of our rescue, which council saw a report not too long ago, that we deferred the sale of that for now because water department needs a vehicle. So water department currently has that vehicle until they decide if that's something that they want to keep using, at which point we'll take money from water and repay us this year. Or if they find another vehicle that suits their needs, then we'll put that up for sale this year to recoup $20,000 out of that. And then the extra $8,000 is just equipment for that new tanker, new fire hose. We need hose for the truck. PPE, we need new PPE every single year. We try to offset it so we're not buying 30 sets all at once. So this is for 5 sets. The cost of a set of bunker gear has increased. For council's idea, it is $3,000 for 1 set for a coat and pants. So half of that's paid through DCs, half of that's through taxation. Then we have the other $3,000 for tablets for the fire trucks. So last year in the capital, we had, I think, $4,000 for tablets. We're planning on getting Samsung tablets, trying to get data for them and finding ones that would be suitable for us. It didn't really work out. So we ended up buying iPads, and now we're going to get the other 3 iPads for the truck. This will allow us to use the NG 911 data. $3,000 for DFib. That's fully funded from the DCs. We're getting increased calls, so we're trying to outfit majority of our trucks to run medicals or if we're at events. And next slide. So some items that we put in for consideration. New compressor. We can push this off to next year. The current compressor we have, we bought used from Grey Highlands. It is built in 1998. So it's quite old. And the current Scott air packs that we're using, they're 2216 PSI. They don't make those anymore. So we do have a large amount of stock there. The cylinders are only good for 15 years. And then it has to increase to the 4,500 PSIs. Our compressor right now takes a long time to do 2216 cylinders. So it bring down the downtime of 4,500s. And then the other 2 are just talking points for the aerial truck. That's fully funded by DCs. It's a 3-year wait from when you put out a tender to take delivery of it. With subdivisions growing, I think there's a new school we're talking about, 3 stories. Currently, we're purchasing service from Shelburne, but Shelburne is also down in Orangeville 2 to 3 times a month with their ladder truck. So it's up to council on when or if they want to continue to purchase, or if we're gonna, at a certain point, decide that we need our own ladder truck to order it. And then the fire station expansion is through DCs as well. We've seen increase of service. We need new ladder trucks, so we need somewhere to house it. Currently, we're in talks with Grey County paramedics to see if they can vacate our 1 bay right now to keep costs down for this year until council can decide, as it's also with the Rec Master design out in the new admin building. If we want to put a new fire hall out there, or we're going to outfit where we currently are, because we're kind of landlocked based off the rail trail behind us, works beside us in the medical center. But there's DCs that could be funded for that. But that's, again, if council chooses to go that way. Or we can just renovate where we are and try and make it work. So by having the conversation with EMS, we can kind of push this off, the expansion a little bit off for a couple more years for council to have that decision. And we could, with them being removed, we just have to extend 1 bay to house that ladder truck. But again, whenever we order that ladder truck within 3 years, we need to have a place to put that $2 million truck. And then the treasurer did have a proposal on here for fire reserves. Currently, her thoughts were that if we were under budget on our maintenance for repairs and vehicles, that any of that surplus would go into a reserve. So that's for council to consider.
Questions about fire? Monica?
Thank you, Chair, and just through you, to Fire Chief, thank you for all your hard work to your department. You're doing an amazing job, and hopefully we can continue to support the best we can. That leads to firefighter readiness and staffing. So when I was just reviewing this, I just want to make sure, especially with recent occurrences, with the weather and other events, with growing emergency responses demands, and I know that we are really reliant on mutual aid. Does this budget ensure we are meeting firefighter staffing and equipment needs, especially in high-risk areas? And if there's anything else more that we can support the department, has that already been accounted in here?
Derek?
Yes, so we are quite we are good with our budget for the most part. We can handle all calls currently coming in. We are actually on our sending end of mutual aid a lot now too. So we're helping other departments. So we are in a good situation currently with our emergency services, and there's no question that our residents are safe.
Good answer. Any other Barb?
Thank you. Through you to the fire chief. Thank you, Derek, and your team. With regard to the fire station expansion and the concept of, ambulance vacating that bay, even if they vacated that bay so that you could shift something over, is the fire station currently one of the bays large enough to accommodate a ladder truck, even if we could acquire one? That's my first question.
Through your worship. So if we take over the ambulance bay, that just allows us to park some vehicles that are currently outside, inside. And then for us, for the ladder truck, we would just have to extend. We could go back to where we are now and extend a bay out another 6 feet, which would house a ladder truck, which would save costs for the time being.
Sure. Because we're also at least 5 years out for a multi-use facility. We haven't even got a concept. So I think it's a great idea to incorporate the fire station because we could then use DCs. The other thing is the new compressor. The compressor, you speak about PSIs and you speak about, canisters. Those are your breathing apparatus, correct?
Correct. So the cylinders go in our air packs on our back that the firefighters breathe out of in structural fires, and the compressor is in our hull. It just refills
To
the air
recharge
cylinders.
them.
Yep.
I would say that that's a fair priority to keep up to date, but you're saying that the compressor is adequate at the moment.
So we get it tested biannually. It's passing breathing sample tests, air sample tests. So it is adequate for what we're doing, but at a certain point here in the near future, we do need to upgrade it. And it is at $50,000 for a new compressor currently. With that, we're going to have to, if you saw in the capital plan over the last couple of years, it was retrofitting our packs. So all our air packs are set to 2216s. We have to then bump them up to 4500s. And the thought was to transition each truck at a time to keep costs down, versus where you see some other departments, they'll go out and they'll buy brand new cylinders and air packs, and their cost is over $300,000 to do that. So.
Right. And one more?
Sure.
Thank you. So with regard to the ladder truck and the fire station expansion, we've been putting money aside into reserves for a number of years now in anticipation. But to your point, come September of 2027, we're going to have a 3-story school. The houses that are currently being built by Flatto and White Rose and others are getting taller and closer together, which there isn't that ability to get around the building. You get a bank of townhouses. If one catches fire, it's likely all four or the bank is going to catch fire because the fire department can't get in between to fight. So a ladder truck is becoming more and more a priority. Do we know through you or through Taylor what is currently in the reserve for the aerial ladder truck? Because I know you've been setting money aside.
I would defer that to our treasurer.
Yeah, let me just check.
Thank you. Because if it takes 3 years to get and $2.5 million without a guarantee on pricing, I'm just curious as to how close we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have to get back on that one. But if we are funding some or all of it through DCs, then we are well funded there.
Very good. Thank you. And the fire department thanks you for your advocacy.
He can pay me later.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. All right, we've been at it for an hour and a half. Lacey, do you mind if we take a break before we go to the library? All right, let's come back in about 10 minutes. We'll recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. let's bring the meeting back to order. Thank you, everyone. Library, Lacey, welcome.
Good morning through you. So the library budget, the increase is 72,000 for total. And 21,000 of that is the Mount Forest Library payment that we talked about in the past with the increase per household. 4,000 of that is for postage, 4,500 for audit fees. Our cleaning and utilities and maintenance has obviously gone up just from cost of living. Program materials and professional development have each gone up by 1,500. And 2,900 insurance has gone up as well. So most of those are out of our control. Our capital budget is pretty standard from year to year. So we've got 27,000 in collections, but 15,000 of that is through DCs. Our contribution to reserves is at 17,000, 5,000 for computer replacements, and 5,000 for furniture this year, which is an increase from last year. And then we're also, for consideration, have a new position for community outreach librarian. And this position was brought forth in our strategic plan for the library board. And this is to increase our programming, but also to get us outside of the library walls and get into our newcomers that are coming into the community. This position would take on the adult programming, but also support youth and children's services as well in their programming.
Very good. Thank you, Lacey. Any questions for the librarian at this point? Barb?
Through you, the funding that the library gets from the province and from the municipality doesn't cover everything. It is restricted to certain amounts. And I know that the Friends of the Library do fundraising to support the programming, which creates the hub that we're also very proud of. They're contributing over $3,000 of contribution to the library directly to help with supplies and for the programs. The library does a tremendous job in bringing people into its walls, but also you have been doing outreach over the last several years, but more so in the last year. Can you speak to how you are helping the school in their lack of space or their lack of library? I know that the kids you have regular programs, but are you going into the schools, or I think you go to Edgewood Suites? Can you just elaborate on that outreach piece, please?
So currently we are working with the two local schools in Dundalk to, we actually host them a lot in the library for class visits. There are certain classes that we will go into the schools as well. And there's the odd program that our children's services will run in the schools. I will say that with their lack of space and lack of a library in the schools, that we are seeing a major increase in class visits, which is very time consuming for staff. So part of this position is to help alleviate some of those pressures and continue to support the children in our community. We also are doing a little bit of outreach with Edgewood Suites. I've been running a book club with them for the last year and a bit. And they've asked us if we can come and do more because a lot of their residents, especially this time of year, do not like to leave their building very often. And some of them, there's an accessibility issue there. So they've asked us to come and run some programming out of them. They are open to our the community members coming to some of these programs as well. So it's not just for Edgewood Suites residents. And then we're constantly asked to join the community events that are going on, to join the fair, to join all the downtown activities. And sometimes we just don't have the staff time to do it. And I would prefer to say yes when we can, but I have to be, keep an eye on my staff and potential burnout if we say yes to everything. So some of this is an increase in services. Some of this is trying to continue what we're doing and not burn staff out.
Would it be fair to say that some of the time impact on your staff regarding more classes coming to the library would be offset by some contributions from the school board?
If the school board wants to negotiate that with us, I'm open for discussions, but I don't know where their funding will come from.
So they're not currently contributing.
Yep.
That was the point of my question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All righty. Any other questions regarding the library at this point? Okay, we'll move on to recreation and culture. Kevin, welcome.
Good day, good people. Recreation, we're going up almost 100,000, 20% of the director and development community services wages. 76,000 was moved back into for insurance. The overall operation increase, we're only going up for 4,700, and we've increased our program revenues by another 15,000. So really, our only change from last year to this year is about 20,000. Total capital, we deferred that tractor replacement last year to this year. We have the sports field development. We need 2 studies done on that, the environmental impact study and the engineered grading and drainage plan. We're hoping to get that done because if we start the bypass road, we're hoping that we can take the topsoil and everything they take off the roads, move it in. So we've got some fill to build these sports fields in the future. No specific timeline on when these fields are going to be built. Just we have 400,000 put away or coming for DC charges, but we got to remember DC charges. We only it's only a portion of the project that's reflected on the new residents. So we will still have to pay out of our taxpayers probably 50% of the project plus in the future. This is the year of accessibility, has to be brought in line unless the legislation's changed, but 2025 was the year of accessibility. So we have the McIntyre building, we need to bring some up. We have reserve funds left over from the donation from the McIntyre family. The arena, we need accessible seating put in there. We have 4 playgrounds that need the playground mulch put in this year. In the capital budget, we have that CO2 upgrade that we had to do to be in compliant with the health services. There's 50,000 for a rec master plan, and then every year we contribute 10,000 to rural reserves, and we've been contributing 185 for the infrastructure reserve.
Thank you, Kevin. Timely arrival of Mr. Henry. Welcome, Ethan. Any questions regarding recreation and culture? Barb.
Through you. Do we know what the balance from the McIntyre family reserve is after the accessibility? I think it's probably getting close to being used up.
The balance left in is $28,270 from the donation. So this will clean it up.
Right. And as 2025 is the year of accessibility, Swinton Park, what is considered accessibility for Swinton Park? Is that just washrooms? Is it a ramp? And if we don't do it, are we in non-compliance and we have to close it down?
I don't know what non-compliance is going to be because there's hundreds of thousands of facilities in Ontario that are not accessible. Municipal arenas, there's a lot that still aren't accessible. The halls, there's people have tried, so I don't know what are they going to come and say, hey, you're closed. But Swinton Park, the issue is yes, the washrooms are not accessible. The door widths are not accessible. We'll need automatic door openers, same as the McIntyre building. That's the problem with the McIntyre building. It's not all automatic. So yes, there's going to be a fair bit to get Swinton Park fully accessible just because of the age of the facility, how it was built to get into the bathrooms, a 3-foot opening. We're going through 2 feet of bricks to get in there. So, that's an estimate. That's nowhere set in stone that's the cost, but it was put in there just to be, hey, this is a decision-making time on Swinton Park Hall.
That would have been my next comment. One more.
Hmm?
With regard to the contribution to the North Wellington Aquatic Center, try as we might, we haven't been able to determine when the last invoice came in for the usage. So where Southgate residents used the Mount Forest pool pre-COVID, because I think the pool closed in 20 or 2021, but I'm not sure. We might be able to find it out from North Wellington, but we would pay a subsidy for Southgate residents who took swimming lessons, for instance. I think that if we were to consider a contribution to the aquatic center, we would need to negotiate a non-resident or the waiving of the non-resident fee. I think that would be the only way that I could support a contribution at this time. And of course, we don't know when the pool is going to, this is money being put into a reserve. Are you anticipating this or suggesting the 50,000 be an annual contribution over a period of time, like 5 years or 10 years? In order to meet their request?
This is nothing I've even looked into. As far as the contribution to the Wellington Aquatic Center, that was brought to council and nothing's been relayed down to me from council on any direction on what they wish. So, to me, that's fully up to council on what they want to do proceeding with Wellington. I recommend that we support the facility in some sense due to the usage over that way, but that certainly is council's decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joan, you have your hand up, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin, could you elaborate a little bit on the 185,500 contribution to infrastructure reserve?
That was put into place. So we paid a contribution to the Mount Forest Community Center. We gave them $100,000 over 10 years, which was $1 million. So at that point in time, we started realizing that eventually we'll have to replace our facility. We gave that 100,000 to Mount Forest to replace their facility. We kept putting that proportionally into our facilities for future growth.
You good with that, Joan?
Yes, thank you. I guess we'll talk more about that when we get back to that.
Well, we were, if I could paraphrase, we were paying $100,000 into the Mount Forest Arena project. So when that commitment was finished, rather than stop or take that 100,000 out of the budget, we continued with that 100,000 into our own reserve for a future new arena of our own, if that makes it any clearer. Monica, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just through you to Kevin, just with regards to understanding the recreation master plan and sports field development study at that 150K, I know that it's hard to say when things would happen. I'm just wondering that because time doesn't stop for no one, kids are getting older, people want to be able to enjoy where they're living, which we all know, and I know you know that. Is there any way to even have a little bit more understanding on how these studies will lead to actionable projects that will benefit the residents? And is there a possibility to have an understanding of what the timeline could be? If someone has a child that become a teenager, and we're talking about that many years, or how can we get more of this going, just so that people can enjoy the quality of life in where they've moved into, and also for those who have already been here for so many years?
Kevin?
To answer that, I guess the first thing, the rec master plan, that was a direction from council. That's nothing coming from me into the budget. This was you guys telling me you need it. That's what came to me for the rec master plan. In our plans, that you'll see in the next portion of this council, that we've laid out quite elaborate ideas going forward and plans, but ultimately it all comes down to dollars and cents. Everything we've purchased in the last 28 years, except for one piece of equipment, has been bought with grant money. So all our playgrounds were replaced with grant money. The only piece of equipment that we never got grant money towards was the Olympia in the arena. That was the first. And then this year we're going to put a tractor on taxation. So everything we've done for 28 years, we've done with grants and financial assistance from other outside companies or outside grant opportunities. So unless we decide that we're going to start sinking 100% of the costs out of the taxpayers into some of these projects, all the projects are taking place when grants come available. So this year, Jim asked me yesterday, there's a grant coming out from Trillium. What do we have capital ready to go? Or what projects are we ready to proceed with? The only one that maybe fit that was arena accessibility. So the soccer fields, we're trying to get these ready because the last rounds of grants since Super Builds, we did the arena with Super Build grant. It was one that you could get the grant money and build your project. Now most of them are saying, hey, we got a grant money. What do you have project ready? So you've got to be project ready to get some of these grant monies. So the soccer fields one, we're trying to get project ready. The multi-use facility, we're trying to get project ready. Just so if grant money comes out there, we're not footing 100% of the bill. So timing depends mostly on grants and financing.
So in other words, any day now.
So just to follow up on that, Chair.
Go ahead, Monica. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. No, yeah, Kevin, like for sure. And I think that's also was my point was that perhaps there could be a relook at seeing, as this was a direction from council, how we can further support these initiatives to happen, whether it's sticking up a volleyball net, getting that cricket field in, just what we can do with what we have right now to have those ideas come to pass. I just hear a lot from people that people are moving, they want to stay, but they can't. They want to have, I'm pretty sure we all understand that. These are the concerns that we are having. And that's just playing more into, food safety, shelter are the basic necessities that sometimes people can't even meet in their life right now. And then with having lack of quality of life for recreational things for their kids and families, this is just kind of where my mind frame is coming into seeing all this balance, this budget and how much the staff are working hard to get the numbers and with balancing council direction and the needs of the community, working with grants. I'm really happy to hear that the question was asked by the CAO about what do we have ready to go, because you are absolutely correct in that. We need to have projects ready for funding that is available out there at times. So yeah, just wanted to have the benefit of the public as well to understand when decisions are being made, that there's a clear understanding that grants and money that is being invested into Southgate through different programs is causing things to happen. Hopefully there will be a little bit of a shift where we will actually be able to invest a little bit more into the recreation area to help mitigate that and have people have a quality of life with their family.
Thank you. All righty, Jim, please.
Yeah, and just to add on to there, building of the Eco Park Phase 2 out to Highway 10, that's where this sports field is situated. That road is critical to being started, and it's planned for hopefully this year. So that's the piece of the puzzle that we've got to build around, right? So as soon as that road comes in, then we can start to think that now we can get there, right? So now here we are at the next step. So
yep,
it's coming soon.
Any day now. Very good. Oh, Martin, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Morning, Kevin. That 185,000 plus contribution to infrastructure, totally agree with it. That we were talking before about the 100,000 for 10 years to Mount Forest. Uh, is that 85,500? Where does that number come from? Because could that be lowered to 100,000 for the reserves? Or is that what's needed? Or how do you figure what you need to put in reserves? Do you have a formula, or could it just be 100,000 for this year? Would that hurt you in getting a new arena?
Kevin?
I think this is back on. I've been pushing the button off and on here. The 185 is just a number that it started out at the 100,000, but when Liam was here with his creative financing on his Excel sheet, when we had a capital project in rec, it went to that transfer of reserves. So the 185 is there because we don't have a project going this year that there is a transfer to reserves. So that number stayed. So last year there was probably only, I believe, maybe 150,000 went for a transfer to reserves. 30,000 went to Hopeville roof or the arena lighting, whatever, out of that reserve. So that number's kind of up and down annually. It's just this year we haven't put a project against the reserves. Now, some of these ones will probably come out of that reserve fund too, such as the CO2 upgrades. So 25,000 for the arena upgrades reserves is coming from that account. So really 185 this year will only be 145 or whatever, but that's the number Liam started with. And that's kind of what's worked in and out of what we've used in capital projects. Just that way, anything in rec, if we have to fix anything or change anything, isn't a hit to the taxpayer on that year.
Yeah. Okay, well, that makes sense. I was just wondering because I was going to say, if you have that 185,000, why not pay for some of the things in your items, then just put 100,000 in the reserve? But I can see where you're getting from, and no, that explains a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, not seeing any further questions on recreation and culture. We'll move on to public works. Everybody's favorite, roads and solid waste. John, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. So for the roads operating budget, it's an increase of 1.2 million year over year. 790,000 of that is contribution to roads capital and debt repayment. There's an increase in materials, cost of fuel and supplies for keeping operations going. Increase in labor and materials for pavement patching, trying to keep ahead of the potholes as much as we can on the asphalt. As well as an increase in labor and materials and contracted services for bridge maintenance, trying to keep them from needing replaced, and as well as the changes per the organizational review.
Okay, any question on that piece? Not seeing any. Waste resources and diversion management. Martin? Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Martin, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. John, the 790,000 contribution to roads and capital, does that obviously includes projects that you have for working on the roads this year, right? What percentage?
No, so that's, I believe Taylor might have to help me out on this one, but I believe that's to cover overages from the 2024 budget as well as going towards the debt repayments.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority is covering 2024 overages.
Okay. So, I know this is a budget for basic what we need. Are there any, I know the one item is for paving, that's an addition, but looking at the bridge report too, is this enough, or are there projects that you could put aside for another year? Because the bridge report says there's a lot that have to be replaced with culverts or whatever. So is there anything that can be stripped from this? I don't like saying that because I'm always for adding another 1 or 2% for the roads, but at the time, is there anything that could be moved forward?
Don't forget, Martin, we haven't got to the roads capital piece yet. This is just the
Oh,
operation.
operating. Okay, sorry. I'm getting
Yeah, so
confused.
there's,
This
if
is
you,
the transfer piece.
yeah, we'll get there. Very good. Okay, so Barb, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Milne, again, to the debt repayment, that is the Victoria Street project, correct? And
Yep.
is that for the resurfacing, or is that with regard to the pipes in the ground that provide water and wastewater? Is any of the debt repayment covered by user fees?
All of the wastewater and water items that are in Victoria Street are covered by user fee.
Thank you.
Monica, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, just with regards to the tipping fees, with tipping fees and cart revenue increasing by 38,500 rather. Are we seeing a trend in greater waste diversion?
Just hold that question for a second, Monica. We haven't got to the waste resources and
Oh,
diversion just yet.
Sorry, my mind is
That's
there.
next, but
Okay.
just hang on to that question.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the roads operating budget? Jason?
So with that, to that point, with the Victoria Street, that money is most of this money that we had to borrow. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So what's our plan if we don't get this funding? It sounds nice that we're going to, but what if we don't?
If we don't get the loan, you mean?
No, we're planning on getting we have the loan now, right? We're planning on getting funding, are we not?
Sorry, we have a portion of Victoria. We have phase 2 of Victoria. We do not have phase 1 yet.
But I think if I understand the question correctly, we borrowed the money from CIBC.
Right.
And we're currently paying that back. It's due, I think it matures this year, or some of it does.
Yep.
And then we're going to roll it over into Infrastructure Ontario, correct?
Yes.
Right. So
But
your question is, what if we don't get that?
Yeah, what,
I'm thinking, Jim, maybe you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, so Victoria Street, it has close to a $5 million grant that we received through ICIP.
yes.
And that's for the water component of, and we still are carrying forward some work to be done at well 3 that will be part of this grant as well. But we have to dissect that work because the pipes are down below. We are able to capture some of the granular materials that are going back into the road. Triton has worked out all these numbers and how things work for the grant because some of it is the road work itself as well. So it's broken out into the water side as well. The wastewater's a minor component to the overall project, but again, user fees. But the majority of the road work construction is, there's a factor for some asphalt, but it's basically a lot of the sidewalks and drainage that was put in and the pipes that were replaced across some of the bigger drains along the street. Those are all road related. So that's all that this debt receipt payment is part of that component. So we do have a very high level, detailed breakdown of how it's all converted over from roads, water, wastewater. And just remember that roads does carry with it the stormwater management part of things, the catch basins, the outlets to the storm drains.
But and to Jason's question, Taylor, you mentioned it early in the presentation that we have some assurances from Infrastructure Ontario that we are eligible for borrowing money there once we get the audit done and once we submit the the FIR numbers to Infrastructure Ontario, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, nobody said,
No.
you know, but we have some assurances that we are eligible.
And I mean, if worst case scenario and we don't get to the May 31st deadline, we can renew with CIBC for another year or a short-term loan or something like that in the meantime while we get the IO sorted out.
Right. I think that was the essence of your question.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was,
Okay.
just saying, because it's cost us 100 extra thousand already. to
That's,
get insurance,
yeah,
so-
exactly.
Or, an interest. so,
Right.
yeah.
Martin, please.
Muted.
Taylor, there's not much of a percentage point difference between the two different loans from CIBC. It's only like 0.6 or something. I know that's a lot of money when it's looked at, but
Yeah, it was
if we don't get it, we're not going to be ripped off exorbitantly, right?
No, and I mean the trend, you can look at it in both like two different ways, because if we stuck with a conventional loan through a bank, you would get terms, right? So then you could renegotiate the rate, whereas Infrastructure Ontario, you lock in for that rate. So if we lock in today at 4%, interest rates can keep going down and down, and we take this loan for 10 years. Well, we've maybe have overpaid in interest then if CIBC would have offered us, say, 2% in a year. So you kind of have to play the market, which is why I assume Liam had taken CIBC loans in the past, that we are set to mature in 2029.
Okay. Any other questions regarding operating? For now, at least? Okay, not seeing any. Move on to waste resources and diversion management. John, please.
So the total operating budget has a 163,000 decrease year over year. 237,000 of that is a decrease in the waste resources diversion management capital contribution. $38,500 increase in revenue from tipping fees and carts. That was moved from the capital to the operating, so it'll kind of even itself out there, as well as the organizational review changes and role changes.
Okay, Monica, we're ready for your
Yes.
question now.
Oh,
Please.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. I jumped a bit there. So, yeah, it was just with regards to tipping fees and cart revenue, increasing by the 38.5K. I don't know if I said that right, 38,500. Are we seeing a trend in greater waste diversion?
Again, I think that 38,500 was just moved from capital to the operating budget. Am I correct in that, Taylor?
Yes, yeah, it was just a net zero in the capital budget. And technically the carts are inventory, so they shouldn't really have ever been in capital. So that's just kind of an accounting move.
Oh, perfect. And just a quick follow-up, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
So thank you so much for that clarification. That's very helpful. Just with regards to the 237,389 decrease in WRDM, capital contributions, temporary cost reduction. Sorry, is this a temporary cost reduction or will it impact future waste services?
Taylor, I'll get you to take that one as well.
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I didn't look deep in this, but I think it's just because the capital portion for this year was lower than in previous years. And we are taking on debt in WRDM this year. So that kind of eliminated the need for taxation here.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, not seeing any other questions. Oh, Barb, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you and to you, John, or Jim. There's a lot of unknowns with regard to the producer responsibility and the recycling and how that's going to affect our budget, our, different trucks on the road. Have we come up with it? I don't know who to look at. Have we come up with a number yet? Do we know how it's going to roll out? Because honestly, I think the province really got it wrong, but there's so many unknowns.
We've reached out to CMO to get answers about moving forward with waste management about that, and we're still waiting for answers.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to water and wastewater, public works. John?
So the water total operating budget is zero because it's all user fees, 364,000 increase year over year. 153,000 is an increase in capital contributions and debt repayments. 55,000 increase in chemicals, utilities, insurance, etc. 22,500 water accounts and significant arrears. $14,000 in engineering, $7,900 rent expense owed to Southgate from user fees, and $7,000 transfer of unit 322 from roads to water. So that was a pickup that was used kind of both for roads and water, and now we're going to do it specifically to water so that it's covered by user fees and not of the general taxation.
You might as well do wastewater while you're there, and then we can,
okay,
please.
So total operating budget of 0 again. User fees 111,175 decrease year over year. 197,000 reduction in capital contributions. $40,000 in utilities, chemicals, repairs, contracted services, and postage, and $9,200 in insurance, which was budgeted to finance in 2024.
Thank you, John. Any questions regarding that? Barb?
Thank you. And through you, so write-offs for water accounts that are in arrears and $7,900 rent expense owed to Southgate from user fees. Can you just elaborate? I mean, I know that we have in finance, we've got write-offs for accounts receivable that have to be written off because they're past the point of collection, although we still endeavor to collect. I'll let you try to elaborate on these because this is where we are getting into maybe some kind of assistance. There's, heating and hydro assistance, but what about water? Or are they write-offs to water accounts where people have just left? I don't know. Thank you.
I'd have to ask Taylor on that one, but as far as the $7,900 rent expense owed to Southgate, again, that's just the water department renting space of the depot in Dundalk and hydro, just to unburden the taxation a little bit by going through the user fees.
Thank you. That was mentioned earlier. Thank you. Now we see the number.
And Taylor, I don't know if you can answer the water accounts and arrears.
Yeah, so the 22,500, obviously we dealt first with taxation and significant arrears. Now we're jumping over to water. These accounts, we've kind of looked through, they're over 3 years in arrears. Most of them, the resident has moved away, so we don't really have a lot of way to recoup the funds. We have put a policy in place right before I left that 90 days in arrears, we would roll to property taxes to avoid this. But yeah, these ones just kind of fell under the rug and have gone unnoticed for many years, unfortunately.
Yep, go ahead.
So just to follow up on that, if an individual is renting a home or the facility, is the water meter on the tenant or on the landlord, the property owner? Because that then leads me to the question is if it's a rental and the individual leaves, then it's up to the landlord to collect.
Correct. Ultimately, whoever is on the deed of the property is essentially, in this case, the landlord is responsible for the fees on the property. A lot of the times in the cases of a renter, they do put the renter as the first name, so the bill goes to the renter.
Okay. Any other questions on that piece? Oh, sorry, Monica, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think some of my question was just answered because I was focusing on the water debt repayment rising, and if we're proactively budgeting to ensure long-term affordability for ratepayers. So I think some of that was just kind of explored. I'm not sure if we have any concrete reason why the debt repayment is increasing. Do we know if it is because of people abandoning their residence, or genuinely as people are not able to afford? It was a very good point that you brought up, Taylor, about rolling those debt repayments into the property tax to avoid the shutoffs and things of that nature. Do we have any analysis of exactly what is causing this increase, and have we ensure long-term affordability for ratepayers?
So I believe there's a study, Jim can correct me, done every 2 or 3 years or maybe more, that goes into how much our fees end up being. And they kind of look on a micro scale of what the fees should be and then to be self-sustaining. Obviously, if we take on huge capital projects like the Victoria Street reconstruction, we can't really build that into the fees likely.
Jim?
Yeah, so the debt repayment currently for water is well 5. It is Main Street East and the water tower. So, and some of those will be coming off in the next couple years. The rate study and financial plan is 5 years, and we are going into that study. There's a recommendation for that award, and that ties in with our municipal drinking water license renewal, that it's mandated that the financial plan be current. So that will be reevaluated, and that could adjust user fees. The way they went the last time was reduce some of the base rate and the consumption goes up a little bit. So if you're doing good water practices and you're conserving water and using it wisely, you're not going to be charged as much. But those studies are coming forward and will be here in the later of the summer for council approval.
Okay. All right. Not seeing any further questions on that one. We'll go to Public Works, Cemetery and Crossing Guards.
The cemetery has a $9,150 a year over year increase. This is due to increased hours of the cemetery caretaker, also helping out with snow removal in town, giving him more hours, but also taking on the Woodland Springs Cemetery. Obviously, we'll have to have more operating expenses there. And then for the crossing guards, it's just $840 year over year increase.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions on that piece, Barb?
Thank you, through you. So for the cemetery, is it not supposed to be covered by fees? Are there not through the bereavement board or
Perpetual care?
Thank you, perpetual care.
No, so the perpetual care would be just to upkeep the headstones and whatnot, but the actual grass cutting and whatnot is separate.
So that's an increase in service.
Yeah.
Because now we have taken on another cemetery and there's another place for people to reside.
Yep.
And end of life.
Yep. Any other questions regarding cemetery and crossing guard? Jim?
Just to add on to Woodland Springs, the cemetery caretaker will be doing, we suppose, a weekly trip there to just check the overall condition. We will be contracting out the grass service for that through our other contracted grass services in the area. So we will not be running a lawnmower out to Woodland Springs and the caretaker looking after grass, but he will be there as a duty to make sure everything's in good shape and order. So.
And I presume our current cemetery maintenance person would be overseeing burials as well out at Woodland?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
I believe Holly had mentioned, I think they had one last year.
Yeah. Well, I don't expect it to be a huge time commitment, but I wouldn't want to predict what the future might hold for some of us or all of us. Anyway, okay. Any other questions regarding cemetery crossing guard? For now, not seeing any. Capital budget, Public Works. This is the fun one.
Thank you, through you.
Please.
So we have debt repayment of the street lights, debt repayment of storm drains on Main Street East. Then when we get into roads, we're doing or proposing to do cold in place and paving on side road 49 from 04 to Gray Road 9. Ida Street from Hanbury to the town limits. And Southgate Road 26 from side road 71 to side road 73. Also in the roads, we have proposed replacement of structure 34, which is a CSP pipe in a municipal drain crossing Southgate Road 14. And we're doing that because we're also proposing to resurface that road this year with double surface treatment. And then, so that would be Southgate 14 from Gray Road 8 to side road 19. And then we also have double surface treatment of Southgate 14 from Gray Road 14 to side road 3. That's what we have for equipment.
John, sorry, what was last?
Southgate 14 from side road 3 to Gray Road 14.
Okay.
And then as far as equipment, we have a tandem axle plow truck, as well as a new pavement edger to go on for doing strips to our old one's getting pretty well wore out, as well as another sweeper for a trackless machine. We currently only have one, and in the spring it's a hot commodity, so try and get two.
And some capital there for signs.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions? John, in your estimation, is the amount we're going to expend on capital projects for roads, is that up from last year or similar or down?
I believe it would be similar. I can't remember the exact numbers for last year. Give me a second here.
Well, if it's similar, that's fine. Do we have high confidence that we can in fact get these projects done? Like,
Yeah.
do the contractors have capacity to do this kind of stuff?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions regarding road capital? Barb, please.
Thank you. Just to feed off your question, Mayor Milne, I noticed that the 2.2 million is from reserves. Is that what we would normally budget to take out of reserves for road projects? Or is this something new because it's such a hard hit on on the taxes?
I might have to ask Jim or Taylor for help on that one.
Yeah, I would say that, as you'll see later in the presentation, to take on debt right now, I think would be ill-advised, but ultimately up to council. So I use the reserves to get us down to a more palatable rate.
Thank you. So an answer is that we haven't put money into reserves specifically for these projects. This is to soften the blow.
Correct.
Thanks.
And at the end of the day, that's what the reserves are for, right? Get these projects done. Any other, Monica, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to your last point, absolutely, like I was thinking about if we're adequately funded for road maintenance, reserves to prevent large tax spikes in the future years, which I think was just pretty much touched on. Just a quick question about the 517K in transfer station upgrades, just for the benefit of public as well. How does this improve service efficiency, and what impact does it have on waste management fees?
Well, just hold on to that topic too, because that question rather, please, because we haven't got to the waste diversion piece yet.
Okay.
We're still working on the roads piece. But I mean,
sorry.
good question, but I'll come back to you. I'll come back.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the roads capital for now? Okay.
I would
John?
just want to outline to council that this is, there's virtually no money going into reserves in this year for roads. So we should think going forward, because obviously this year we've taken a lot out and maybe we want to move projects, what have you. But I think we need to keep in the back of our mind that we need to start beefing this up.
You're certainly not the first person to suggest that. We get told that every year, I think. And
You have good accountants in your history.
And the response of council is up and down over the years, whether we put more into reserves for roads, that's for sure, or for anything indeed. Barb, you have a question, please?
Thank you. And to that point, Taylor, I know that we've had the discussion where we, the goal is to put 1% every year into the roads budget. I don't know that we are able to do that every year or that we have been able to do that since we've had the discussion, but I see your point. I mean, reserves are there to help us in difficult times or when things blow up. But I don't know, the inflation and the cost of just doing business these days seems to be blowing up. But yeah, how do you propose us finding dollars to put back into reserves there, Taylor?
That is a great question for somebody who has better knowledge of roads than I do.
The $1 million question.
Jason?
What was the equipment for 517? I didn't hear you, John.
Oh, so the total was a, just bring it back up here again, sorry. One new tandem plow truck, a pickup truck that I missed before, pavement edger to go on a tandem for doing those asphalt strips, and then a angless broom for a sidewalk machine.
Oh, that's right. Sorry to hear. Yeah.
Okay. Waste resource and diversion management budget. Capital. John, please.
So there's 166,000 in there in debt repayment from the 2003 system startup. 517,000 for the Dundalk transfer upgrades. Development charges will cover 60% of that project, or 310,000. Solid waste reserve will make up 149,000 of it. And solid waste reserves Dundalk site will make up 57,500 of that. A new roll-off tarp system for our roll-off truck. It's needs updated. We have that in there for 17,500. Egremont monitoring wells, $40,000 for that. And a new one new 50-yard roll-off bin for $20,000. And that is to help support a new program. We've got found somebody that will recycle mattresses and couches. So we don't have to put those into the landfill and take up space there. So we just put them in the roll-off bin, and when it's full, we take it down to get them recycled.
I'll come back to Jason. Monica, you had a question regarding, I think it was the roll-off tarp system. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just through you, regarding the 517K in transfer station upgrades, how does this improve the service efficiency, and what impact does it have on waste management fees? Thank you, Chair.
So the layout of the proposed upgrades are in the next slide. Basically in Dundalk, all we have is a shack and an outhouse. So we're trying to build a proper facility for our staff to be able to use and provide a better service for the community. There's some more, I believe there'd be room for more bins in the Sawtooth as well in there.
Well, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Monica.
No, Chair, I was just gonna say, I mean, shack with the facility, not proper facilities, that's definitely something that should be upgraded. So happy to hear at least that will help for that situation, especially for quality of work. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I should think it would probably be a health and safety thing as well, likely. Yeah. I have Martin, and then I'll come to Barb. Go ahead, Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you. That new building, I was, when we're talking about services, since it's going to be a new building, John or Jim, would we use the internet to keep up on payments? Like a lot of people don't have cash and they get a bill. It goes. Could we possibly hook up card machines there?
That is something we were looking into before I had gone off. I'll be honest, I don't think we've moved forward with that since, but definitely for that, the arena, the pool, we've looking into card options there.
Thank you. Good. Barb?
Thank you through you. Hi, John. It's good to see that development charges are covering 60% of the upgrades to the Dundalk transfer station because they wouldn't otherwise be necessary if it wasn't for growth. So that's good to see that that's covered. The new roll-off bin for the increased or the improved service to remove mattresses and such from the landfill. What if the mattress is dropped off in Dundalk? Is it then transported to Egremont? And what else? You mentioned mattresses and something else, and I wasn't quick. Sofas.
Couches.
Sofas. Are we looking at anything with regard, or maybe this is part of producer responsibility again, the styrofoam that comes with, TVs and computers and all those appliances, that kind of styrofoam, and bale wrap. I believe there might be a service provider that might be taking bale wrap.
Okay, yeah, can't answer the bale wrap. I'm not sure on that one. Not sure, Jim, if you can chime in on that.
Yeah, there is someone that is actively taking bale wrap, and we're looking into that program. We also heard through Terry Murphy and Jamie Gott last summer that they were creating a facility in Shelburne that would accommodate bale wrap as well. But we reached out just before the holiday season, and they're not at that point yet. But yeah, we're working, looking into this other facility to take bale wrap to at this point in time. So.
Okay.
So other question, what is start?
Let's get Jim to.
Styrofoam, we haven't got there yet, but that's something we can look into. I know we've been over to Hanover, checked out the densifier and everything. So again, with Dundalk getting some upgrades and creating some space, maybe there'll be an opportunity then. This again, because of the DC component, DC is only eligible for the diversion part of things. Anything that has to do with landfill is not DC eligible, so.
Okay, well,
Question about the mattresses.
okay, go ahead.
Yes, so we'll have a bin in Dundalk and Egremont for them.
Very good. Okay, I just noticed the time, it's 11:30, so we need to move along a little bit. Okay, cemetery, John?
So for the cemetery capital, we have a new zero-turn lawnmower for $10,000 to be funded through reserves.
I've seen that lawnmower and it owes us nothing. She's pooched. Wastewater.
So the sewage treatment facility upgrades for $4,742,000. We have received a grant for $3,462,000 of it, and then the other $1,087,000 will go to debt. Main Street West pre-design for $3,200 will come from reserves, and SCADA technology carried forward from 2024. $468,200 will come from restricted reserves.
And you might as well just roll right on into water.
For the water, well 5 in Main Street, $342,000 is debt repayment, $127 from reserves and $215 from restricted reserves. Water tower, $66,000, debt repayment, reserves make up $19,000 of it, restricted reserves $47,000. Ida Street South, Victoria to Hanbury, $15,800, debt repayment from reserves. Main Street West pre-design, $60,000 from reserves. Osprey Street pre-design, $30,000 from reserves. Gold Street waste management upgrades, wastewater upgrades, $50,000 from reserves, and miscellaneous equipment, $2,000 from reserves.
Any questions regarding water and wastewater capital? Jason?
Just on the sewage treatment facility, John, we got a grant of 3.4, which is good. Can we use DCs on them or?
Yep.
Oh, so we
can-
do? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my understanding was that if you got a grant, you couldn't use
But
DCs,
it doesn't.
which is why we have the debt issuance.
Jim?
We'll have to check in, on that one. We'll have to get back to you. If
I mean, you're
DC's because of the
upgrading
grant
it because of,
yeah,
yeah.
it has to do with growth and that's
Yeah,
part of the
that's what I
grant,
mean.
but
So I just wondered.
yeah, and Taylor could be correct. We'll just have to dive into the details. So
Barb?
And that debt issuance is not on taxation. That is on those who are on the system.
Very recent. Yep, yep, for sure. Okay. And as John mentioned, in the next slide, you can see the proposed diagram upgrades for the transfer station in Dundalk. Yeah, somebody had too much coffee when they drew that one. Capital budget, Public Works. Those are
So items for consideration.
items for consideration. Do you want to speak to those briefly, John?
Yep, through your
Please.
worship. So Southgate Side Road 24 microsurfacing, for 209,000. So that would be, just basically a seal that we put over that asphalt. It's, 5 years old now, so it's kind of the prime age to put this wear surface back on it to help the aging asphalt cement in the asphalt to, keep the water out of the road. It's the same stuff that we did on Side Road 15 from 14 to 22 last year. The other one is the Holstein sand shed replacement for $600,000. The sand shed we have now is in poor shape and we're recommending replace it rather than sink money into fixing it. And the waste garage overhead door replacement for the garage at the dump for the trucks for 45,000.
Okay. We'll come back to those with our list of proposals. Joan, you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, the 600,000, is that just an estimate or that's a huge figure that we're looking at for a replacement?
That's a realistic figure for replacement, yeah.
Okay.
And just to be clear, Joan, that number is not in the budget currently. That's a
Yeah,
proposal.
I know.
Okay, good, good. Monica, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just about the 45K, just wanted to confirm that that's something that must happen this right now, or is that something that could wait, or is it like an urgent safety matter?
No, that can wait. That's why it's an item for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Barb?
Going back to the Holstein Sand Shed, was that not a discussion we had in 2024? Jim, I believe you brought forward some options. We were looking at fixing the roof, but we deferred it. And we looked at these different kinds of structures. What structure did?
So for the 600,000 would be the VP Durastore dome style.
And if I'm not mistaken, they were going to honor their 2024 price when we got to our budget deliberations.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to capital budget remaining departments. Are these all proposals or are these all actually in the budget?
These are all in the budget.
Okay, so finance, computers. Or sorry, I'm a little unclear. Have we already talked about these in each of the separate budgets?
Yeah,
I see.
this is just kind of a
Okay.
summary. Although industrial land wasn't presented by anyone specifically, since it's not really an operating department on its own. But I just wanted to put in that it's carried forward from 2024 since there were no shovels in the ground in 24.
Right.
And then we have updated some of the numbers there. The majority of it on Southgate end is funded through the land sales, with some debt issuance will be needed in 2026. And then the rest to be funded by Flato.
Okay,
And then everything else, yeah, you've already seen.
great, okay. Do you want to go through the capital funding sources sheet there?
Yeah,
Taylor?
yeah. So obviously big outs, not a lot of ins. So 6.3 million is coming from unrestricted reserves. 1.6 million is coming from restricted reserves. Grants, which is great, is 4 million. Development contributions is the Flato one for industrial. And then sale of assets is 63,000 with the debt issuance of 1.08 million. We will look into that to see if we can fund that through DC. So I'll get that updated for draft 2 if that changes. Transfer to capital fund 2.1 million. Transfer to reserves is 493,000, mostly coming from rec and fire. And then debt repayment is just shy of $1 million, and that's the principal portion, and then debt interest is 300,000.
Thank you, Taylor. Barb?
Through you, going back to industrial land, my understanding or my recollection was the developer was responsible for 50% of that road. But it doesn't look like from those numbers that the developer is picking up their 50%. They're responsible for building 50% of the road. Can you clarify how all those numbers are working? And
sorry, just
I guess we can't sell lots in the Eco Park Phase 2 until we actually have a road.
So the some projects are 33% township, 67% Flato. The overall bill will be in Flato's favor, or sorry, in Southgate's favor. We will pay 6.18 million and they will pay 7.28 million. So a little bit lower than 50% on the Southgate end. Most of the funding from Flato is coming in 26 though, the way the projects are split.
Is that why we have to take debt issuance to cover the delay in Flato funding?
No, it's because that will be in 26. It'll just be that it really is dependent on how much of the actual bill comes in at and then how much we have in that reserve. It could be that the reserve fully funds it. It's just kind of in there right now because in previous years we've always had a debt line for this project. So I just kept it in there as a safety net.
Okay. Oh, Jim, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so also with this one is that the dropped out of the
Squirrel fell off.
hang on a second.
Thanks, sir.
Is that this is being funded through the land sales, right?
Mhm.
So this isn't hitting general taxation. This is from the sales of properties coming. We still retain 50 acres in there, so there's still more to come out of there. So this shouldn't be hitting taxation.
Right.
Should be self-funded.
Okay. Yes. Jim, go ahead.
Motion to go past noon?
Sure. Is there a seconder for that? Barb? All those in favor? That looks like it's carried. Although I remain optimistic, but we'll see. Going forward, Taylor, to the next sheet, which is the impact on the taxpayer as the budget is currently proposed.
Yeah.
What, if I could ask you, what is the tax impact on 100,000 K of residential assessment?
Oh, I think
I can see the increase there of 283,000, like the impact on 283,000. But what is the total, not the increase, but the total taxes on 100,000 K of residential assessment?
I would have to get back to you on that number.
Because I saw the same number as the deputy mayor did. As someone was saying they were paying $7,000 on a house in Dundalk.
Yeah.
But of course, they didn't mention what their assessment was or anything else in context. So I'm just wondering, what would the taxes be per 100,000 assessment with this budget as it's proposed currently?
Yeah, I will have to come back with that.
That's fine. Thank you. Moving on, you can see the impact on general reserves, what's going in, what's coming out. Any questions regarding that?
So
Then
I
you can
just,
see,
I had my own note for this, sorry.
oh, go ahead, please. Yes.
Just to make it clear, because in the in column, you can see that 3.7 million is going in. And then my previous chart, I have only 493,000. So of that, the 493,000 above was just taxation. So obviously we have amounts coming in for DCs, which is the obligatory reserves, the 1.28 million. And also included in that number is the CCBF funding. So 1 million is DCs and CCBF is the remainder. So I just want to be clear that this whole chart in essence is an estimate at best, because I had to use the 2023 numbers that I provided to KPMG and work them forward through the 2024 spending and then this budget. And then you'll see that a big chunk, the 2.33 million in reserves capital purposes. This is because the reserve for water was left in a debit balance. And then in accounting terms, that means we've overextended that water reserve. So once we receive the Victoria debt issuance, I'll have to refund that reserve. So that was also found through the 2023 audit process. But yeah, so just so there's no confusion on why does this show 3.7 and that shows 493. And then I just wanted to note as well that although this does say 26 million, which looks like a great number, DCs make up 10 million of that, which are obviously, as we all know, for specific use only related to growth. So then we're left with about 16 million. After that, water and wastewater are about 5 million of that balance. So we're left with around 9 or 11 million there. And then we also have some projects earmarked in the future, such as the Highway 10 portion and the Eco Park project, which is 2 million. So that leaves us with around 9, and then roads projects in the future. So I don't want council to get an idea in their head that we have a well-funded reserve, because in our audited statements for 2022, we have net assets of 59 million. So that says to me, eventually those assets will need to be replaced. A chunk of that is land, a chunk of that is building, so those likely don't need to be replaced. But just to keep in your mind that these aren't equitable numbers. I know I don't have an answer to how to refund these exactly, because I don't know which projects can be pushed in the future. I don't know which projects can be canceled. We have to rely on the department heads for that. But I just wanted to flag this as this is not, maybe 26 million is just not the truest number if you're going to rely on that, as that's what our reserves are.
Okay, thank you. Don't ask me to repeat it though.
I can repeat it.
Yeah, well, you'd have to repeat it for me for a few times. Any questions on that particular slide? Nope. Moving on to the debenture summary. Do you have some notes there?
Yep. So essentially, just to go back to Jason's point originally was, can we take on that funding? So per the annual repayment limit, we have 3.39 million that we are allowed to take on in repayments every year based on our own source revenue. So this chart here is saying to us that we have 1.3 million in debt repayments in 2025. So we are well within our limit of debt repayments to take on the rest of the Victoria Street. Which is mostly an IO consideration, but obviously CIBC will take that into consideration as well. And then the next slide, I just wanted to highlight, because it would be easy to say we have a $2 million gap in 2025, we should just take on debt to alleviate some of this percentage. And you're fair to do that, that's fine. I just wanted to highlight some of the major projects that department heads have brought forward for future years that will likely require debt if grants aren't received, and if various other funding sources aren't received. So in 2029, you'll see a lot of the debt matures, which is great. So that will fall off. But if all of these projects are approved and all of these projects, the debt is at 10 years, we will be in kind of a crunch in 2029 with what to do. So obviously there are some things that we can do. We can extend the life of loans. We can push projects into the future. We can cancel projects altogether. I just wanted council to see that this is kind of our snapshot as of today where we're headed. And much of this is subject to change. I just wanted to outline that if you want to take on debt this year, it will impact future years.
Good to know. Absolutely. Any questions on the debenture slides? Martin?
Muted.
Yeah, I know. I owe money into that kitty. Just a comment. I was really glad to see this, Taylor, because if you don't know this, ahead, like it's just like the opposite side of the coin with all the infrastructure debt we have.
Right.
If we don't keep on top of it, we don't know. So I really, really appreciated seeing this slide because it is important. And yes, like that 26 million in reserves. If you don't know the fact that a lot of it is already taken up,
yeah,
then it looks better than it is. And to see this, it could be worse than it is right now. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I meant to start with this. I didn't mean to be alarmist by this in any way. Like, I don't want to say this is where we're headed and everything is bad. That's not what I intended at all. I just wanted you guys to have a good sight on what's going on with our debt load.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Any final words, Taylor, for now?
Yeah, I hope you all appreciated everything that we brought forward. I know that a lot of staff have been tirelessly working at this and trying to cut the numbers where we can. I'm sure there's some room for improvements. Yeah, I guess we'll just leave it with you and then what you bring back to us on changes that we can make and bring forward.
Okay. So what I'd propose now is that, Monica, go ahead. You have a question?
I know it was just a thought, but I don't want to interrupt you. Or it's just a quick thought.
Is your question related to the debenture summary there?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a summary of today. Just like I thought about
Well,
that, but
we're not done yet. We're getting close, but we're not done. Yes. So what I would propose now is that if councillors individually have direction on individual items they'd like to see added or taken out, maybe now would be the time to propose such a thing. Maybe let's go back to page 8 of the slides. It's the additional proposed items, and they're listed there. It starts with the Durham Hospital grant. I'm not sure how you want to handle this, but I would suggest that if somebody would want some of these or any of them added, a motion should come forward to that effect. Get a seconder, and then we can debate the merits of that addition, and we'll vote on it, whether it goes in or stays out. So, Kayla, do you want to add something, please?
Yes, just for the Durham Hospital, we were asked how much was left in the grant funding that was already budgeted, and it's $18,000.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that little piece of information, there's the list there, as I say. Does anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to add any of those? Monica, I see your hand still up. Go ahead.
Chair, just a point of clarity for myself, because I need to send my regrets for the next meeting at 1 p.m. for a council meeting, so I won't be here. And just with what you're saying to do at this point, will we have more time later? Or I'm just wondering how the next
The next budget meeting, I forget the date. Somebody remind me of what that is.
March
please.
5th? I think.
Yeah, it's March 5th in the afternoon. So we'll
Yeah.
have regular in the morning and it'll be in the afternoon.
So on March 5th, any changes that we make today will be reflected in the proposed budget at that point. We will have more discussion opportunities then to either move stuff in or out or do whatever your council wants to do with the budget. So any changes that are made today will be reflected in phase 2 that's brought back to us on March 5th.
Oh, okay. And we have a council meeting, there's a council meeting at 1, so are we doing all this now? Like we have enough time, basically? I'm just wondering if we have enough time. We'll see, right? I guess.
Well, it's 6 minutes to noon. I don't know how much time we need for lunch, but
Okay.
the public planning and the council meeting is scheduled for 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So we're absolutely going to try to hit that time.
Okay.
Lunch may or may not take an hour. It might only take 15 minutes if we don't get this meeting done in a timely manner. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Milne, I don't believe we'll probably get to Kevin's other item on this agenda today, unfortunately, because we do have a stop. We have a public planning meeting and presentations in our regular meeting, so we can't go past probably 12:45 at the latest.
I thought we'd just agree to his plan.
Yeah, we can defer that to the next committee of the whole, if we don't get
All
to
right.
that.
Well, we'll see where we get to we'll be able to make that clear if we're still sitting here at 12:30 or 12:45. Okay, Barb.
Well, getting to the question at hand then, seeing that we have 18,000 remaining in our general 25,000 grants, I propose that we utilize some of that fund to cover the Durham Hospital grant request on a one-year basis of $2,500. We can keep that earmarked for, because I think it was they were asking for 5,000, or were they asking for 2,500 over consecutive years? Because in the past, we have done $2,500 over 3 years. And I would propose that we consider that from our donations, grants and fund, because we've already got that.
So you're asking for $2,500 to go to the Durham Hospital Foundation this year, 2025.
And consider it for 2 consecutive years. So $2,500 per year for 3 years,
Okay.
but based on budget consideration.
So maybe just leave it at 2,500
Sure.
for this year.
Yes,
That
that's
way
fine.
Then okay.
That's
Is there a
great.
seconder for that? Jim will second that. Any discussion? Martin, please.
I was gonna say, if it's a one-shot deal and there's 18,000 in there, I was gonna say give them 5,000 this year, then be done with it. But I certainly agree with Barb's sentiments there. Take it out of that fund and not have taxes pay for it. So.
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, Kayla, please.
Thank you. I could be incorrect, but since our policy specifically says that that fund is not meant for hospitals, I think maybe it should be in the motion that you're waiving policy.
Oh,
What does the mover like? What would the mover like to do?
yeah. Whatever we need to do. I don't want to get to the end of the year. My argument
Yep.
is get to the end of the year and, we have $18,000. Let's give it to, whatever, when the hospital serves a significant reach.
Yep.
If we need to waive policy to include the Durham Hospital grant request in our grant formula, because, from the Eco Park and Solar Fund, then I would move that. But we need 2/3 vote to waive policy?
So I would just ask a little bit of clarification. Does the policy say that we cannot give money from that fund to a hospital?
Yes, that's correct.
Can we make the distinction? It's not going to the hospital, it's going to the hospital foundation, which of course is a different thing.
Mhm.
I mean, we're splitting hairs, but it is different.
I'm not sure on that one.
Since we're since we're not finalizing this today, this is a motion to direct staff to add it in. And we could, if it requires that at the next meeting, we could certainly explore what we need to do.
Or do you want
It
to,
gives staff time to figure it out.
do you want to defer this until the next phase 2? Let staff research it and then make a recommendation.
Whatever gets it done. I don't want this coming from
No,
taxation.
I get that. Madam Clerk.
You can just add the clause that you waive the policy, like it's
If
the one time,
necessary.
it's, yeah, if necessary, it's,
Okay.
I would just have that in there now and then it's.
Yep, that makes it clear.
So
Barb.
So as opposed to that fund, we still have Eco Park and Solar Fund that benefits the Southgate Solar Fund is to be used for projects that benefit those in the West. So we could direct staff to consider the contribution to the Durham Hospital grant from any of those community funds. So then we don't need to waive policy.
You're the mover. You tell me what you'd like to see.
Let's just if I could move that we direct staff to figure out a way of supporting the Durham Hospital grant but not through taxation.
Kayla?
Yeah, I think we need something either specific, either we're funding it through the solar fund or we're waiving policy. I think those are our options when it's not through taxation.
No, can we not just ask staff to come back with a recommendation on how to get it done?
Well, we've got a motion on the table that's been seconded, and I think staff have given us a way forward here. Either waive policy or direct staff to put it in the budget, financed through the community, the solar fund or the Eco Park Fund.
And I can read the policy and I have it up just so you know what you're possibly waiving. It just says this policy does not apply to requests for financial support from hospitals.
Right.
So right now, the motion reads that the committee recommend that council direct staff to add the Durham Hospital grant request in the amount of $2,500 to be funded from the grants, donations and funding budget. And that the committee recommend that council waive policy number 3 to include that grant to be funded by the grants, donations and funding budget. I can amend that so that it's from either Eco Park or Solar.
Well, I think,
Six to one,
I think
half dozen
that
the
I
other.
see some heads nodding. Jason?
So if we waive it though, will that allow the 2,500
Mhm.
every year without going back into that? No.
It's just a one
No,
time.
this
Yeah.
is a one-time.
So I'd propose, well, I'd make an amendment that's 5,000, but anyway.
Well, if you want to make an amendment to change that to 5,000.
Well, rather than, I would, rather than, we're having to do this again next year to get, is what I'm
But
hearing.
we're just, the intent was for just this year. Rather than commit ourselves, 2 or 3 years out the road.
And
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's only 1 year, we have to revisit this to go forward with Barb's policy, just do a 5,000, but.
So from a mover's perspective, to avoid having to amend it, and perhaps the seconder would agree that we change the amount to 5,000
Okay. You're all right with that, Jim?
I'm good.
All right.
and we
So
waive
we have
policy to do.
$5,000 proposed to be sent to the, or included in the budget to go to the hospital, Durham Hospital Foundation. And we're waiving the policy for this year only. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it again, but for this year only. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Any other additions that people would like to make? Barb?
So the Southgate anniversary celebration, I think it's important that we continue through with this. I mean, it's a nominal amount. Could it come from reserves, or could it come from the Eco Park and Community Fund, Southgate Solar Fund, simply because that's what the money is for.
Mhm.
It's already there for the purpose of community benefit. So I would move that we continue with the anniversary celebration plan and fund it equally from Eco Park and Southgate Solar Fund.
Yep. Seconder? Martin, thank you. Discussion? Joan, do you have a question? No? Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Joan.
Oh, discussion. I was going to second it. So that's a good move, Deputy Mayor, because I was gonna ask if we were going to put it through taxation, that we decrease the amount. But yes, I will agree with it coming from somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Anybody else want to add anything?
Joan.
Joan, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Lacey before. I wanted to talk about the new position to pass a motion, but Lacey, what's the maximum amount of hours that were you putting in for that position?
13.
Currently, the position is budgeted for 30 hours.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Barb? Wait,
So, yep.
sorry to interrupt. Joan, you're moving that do we have a motion on the table?
Yes, I'm moving that we had it.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Second discussion. Sorry.
That's all right. Barb will second that. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, at the board meetings. Lacey this includes to make sure that she has benefits, right? Could you do a trial basis for part-time? And what amount of that would be?
Lacey?
Just give me a second. I do have these numbers. So if we wanted to avoid paying the benefits, the hours would go to 20 hours. We could start there and slowly build up over the years. That would be a savings of $21,000 if we went to a 20-hour work week instead of 30.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion regarding this item? Questions? Okay, Barb?
Move an amendment that we consider this or look at it at a part-time introduction as we did other positions and see how it grows.
So that would be, did you have a number? Oh, I heard the hours.
21 was the difference, so it would be
37.
$36,342.
I guess before we go and vote on that, I'm gonna ask Taylor. We've already increased. Okay, so those the first two did not come out of taxation. This one will come out of taxation, at least so far as it's proposed. What would be the impact for the 37K for the part-time position? Percentage wise?
It'd be 0.19 rather than 0.3.
Okay, just so that everybody's clear. Lindsay.
So as the motion stands right now, it's that the committee recommend that council direct staff to add the new position for the library as a part-time position at $36,342 to the library budget to be funded from general taxation.
Right.
Okay.
And did I get a seconder for that amendment?
You did.
I did.
I
Okay.
just
No.
amended what
No.
Joan and Barb had moved.
That's fine. That's fine. That's good. Any other discussion, questions on the amendment to make it part-time? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. So now we're back to the original motion as amended to include it in the budget out of taxation for 37K part-time, 20 hours a year or a week rather, sorry. Any further discussion or questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Any other additions someone would like to propose? Okay, as I said, we'll have another kick at this. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
I'm gonna go the other way. I can take one off the list if you wish.
I was
Um,
coming to that, but go ahead, please.
The Main Street West reconstruction for 2026. That is also the year that we will be constructing Osprey Street to get to the new school. So I had a discussion with Grey County the end of last week about moving that project to 2027 for Main Street West. And they are okay with that. They have the funds in reserve. The road's in decent enough shape. We're gonna upgrade the water main and add sanitary sewer like we did on Victoria Street, but that project could move. So what we could do is take the Main Street West pre-engineering out of the 25 budget. It's about 47K. That it'll reduce the chaos with trucks and all the construction throughout the village. And the other two components, the water and the wastewater, well, they're in the user side of things, so that 47K would come out of the taxation portion for roads.
Well, I like your thinking so far. Okay. Jason.
I'm not sure if I want to make a motion for this, but for the micro surfacing on the road, I think that's something we have to that's a good road there now. It seems to help it a lot, that ceiling. So that's something I'm gonna go back to again. Roads is the one big thing I hear all the time. Glad to see we got a bunch of projects in there. I don't know. I look at that 7.3%, and I know I appreciate what he's have done to cut it, but I look at neighbors to the south of here, and they're experiencing just as much growth, and they're coming in around 3.5, 4, most of them I see. So I don't know. I think we can't just keep taking. I get we have to move ahead, but another $1,000 in tax probably for the average house. So I don't know if you can get her down a couple more percent, I'd make the motion to add that micro surfacing in, but that's just my opinion. We compare ourselves on wages and everything else to other municipalities, and I think we're coming in high this year again. And going back to what I said before, when is this growth gonna give us a payback? So I won't be supporting this budget where it's at. I appreciate the work he's have done. I think they've done a good job, but maybe we gotta trim it a little more. That's just a comp.
Okay, fair enough. Any other
Brian?
thoughts? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Martin, please.
Yeah, no worries. Because we haven't had a chat to talk to Kevin, and he has mentioned the accessibility for Swinton Park, and in his report he also mentioned that we have to look at how much that's costing. Like everything's running at a deficit. So that 50,000, could we just defer that until we hear his report and see if it would be best to sell that as an asset? And because I think it's running 5,000 in the black every year, and how much is it used? So if it becomes a private building, the accessibility doesn't come into it. So could we defer that? Take it out for now? And also the North Wellington Aquatic Center, take that out for now?
Well, as we pointed out when we started, this list on page 8, none of those are in the budget currently. So the idea is the list of proposals is there. If anybody would wish to add that to the budget, then we'd accept a motion.
Yeah, I know. I realize that. But let's get rid of those two and not even talk about them. And
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
we'll have another kick at this at our next meeting on March 5th. Was that the date? Yeah, March 5th
Yeah.
at phase 2. So yeah, nothing done today is set in stone yet until we vote for the actual budget. We're not doing that today.
yeah, oh, I know that. And
So we
and
can
just
reconsider, reconsider any of these at the next meeting or the one after that for that matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And John did say, or Jim said, the waste garage door might not be needed this year. And if there's something that we could do with a sand shed replacement, do some work on it, get a budget number there, and maybe a portion for a placeholder eventually. But as I said, that's all coming back. But there are things to think about anyway.
Lots to think about.
Lots to think about.
Any other additions anybody'd like to make? Or in fact, reductions, if that for that matter. Barb?
So I'm looking at the Holstein Sand Shed, and I'm just wondering if there is, obviously there's no DCs that we can use, but any funding that we might be able to get for that. I hear what Councillor Rice, roads, and microsurfacing. If we don't protect our asset now, then we run the risk of it deteriorating beyond the point, we're just going to be filling with potholes. The replacement vehicle for bylaw enforcement, what is the position, this is a portion of it. Is it also used by building, or is it just bylaw enforcement? And they're out, obviously the increased level of service by bylaw enforcement being out and weather like this, what are the alternatives for that? And as far as the Wellington Aquatic Center, I do have a call into, or a email, into Wellington North to find out what we had paid in the past for non-resident fees, because we used to get a bill for pool usage. Did you find it?
Last time. The last time I believe I can recall that coming in, Brenda Shank was still our treasurer, and it was $700.
Okay.
Is what they charge us for user fees. So that's probably 10 years ago.
Definitely when the pool was open in 2019, we didn't get a bill. Anyway, the reason I brought it up and the reason I asked Kevin originally was if we're going to contribute to a new aquatic center in Mount Forest, which I think that we should do if we expect taxation to cover a new pool eventually in Dundalk or a new arena pad in Dundalk, we support Mount Forest and we support Dundalk equally. We shouldn't be paying non-resident fees for our residents to use a new aquatic center. So that would have to be a decision through Wellington North Council. But in the meantime, I don't want to lose sight that they did come and ask, and we did support the sports complex. We do support the library, and I think we should come up with something that we support the aquatic center. And if that's through our community fund, a portion from our community fund and a portion from taxation, then perhaps that's a 1-year commitment over 5 years or 10 years. They're not even going to get shovels in the ground, I don't imagine, for a couple of years. But I don't want it to be knocked off the list, but to consider it once we get a little bit more information. Thank you, Kevin, for finding that out.
Just to give a little bit of context on that, I could remember when we were negotiating how much we were going to contribute to that arena. One of the things that Wellington North committed to do was that if you did not contribute to the arena, that you would be charged, or your residents would be charged non-user fees, or non-resident fees rather. To date, they have never done that. And there are people from other municipalities using that arena, and they're paying the same price as everybody else is, ourselves and people from Wellington North. So I had the question, or I had the discussion with the current mayor, Mr. Lennox. Are you going to make the same commitment here and then not do it? Well, of course, he couldn't answer it. But I can tell you that I am disinclined to contribute tax dollars to another project in Wellington North if they're not going to charge other municipalities that don't contribute anything to the project and not charge them extra fees. That's not fair. No matter what the amount is immaterial to me. It's the fact that they're not doing what they committed to do. Why would we contribute if we can use it for the same price their residents use it? Anyway, just my thoughts. and it's been a bone of contention for me for a little while. Jim and then Jason, please.
Yeah, just with the roads, the equipment, the new truck, that's to replace the truck, is it?
Yeah, so there would be the sale of an old one in there too to help take down that amount.
How old's the truck it will be replacing?
12 years old.
Okay.
Jason? All right. As I said, this list is, or indeed any of this, is up for discussion until we actually vote on the budget itself. Joan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so I guess I can hold back some of my stuff. I just wanted, I don't know if I'm on the right page, like some of the stuff that I think could be decreased. Oh, I lost it. Total capital budget, I think, is page 10, like $80,000 multi-use facility. I'm thinking we could cut that in half to 40,000 since we're just putting it in reserve and the master delivery services. But as you said, we'll have more time to speak. I don't know if we can backtrack on the director of corporate services because I see there's taken up 20% of quite a few other departments. These are just some of the things that we have to consider taken out, and I want to, but as you said, we will get a chance to look at it in the next meeting. So I'll leave that for now, but those are some of what I'm looking at to cut. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, the main purpose of today's meeting was certainly to present the draft budget and
Okay.
make sure everybody understood at least where we're at currently. And if we needed some changes today, we could do that. Or if we want to wait until the 5th to see, everybody has a chance to ask questions of staff and so on, we can do that too. Barb.
Yeah, we'll wait until the 5th.
Through you to Councillor John's comment about the multi-use facility master plan, that was carried over from 2024. So it's actually already in the reserves. We approved it. And in order for us to have a project ready item, we need to explore the concept and what it is that we actually would be able to develop with through DCs, what would be DC eligible, what the floor plan might look like, how we might be able to fit in admin. But isn't that $80,000 already in, didn't we already put it in reserves?
Yes.
So it's not like it's not costing, it's not added into the 7.3 currently. We already set the money aside for it. And without it, we can't move forward on what kind of funding we might be able to get. Taylor or Jim or anybody?
Yep, I agree. It's already funded from the reserves.
Okay.
That said though, Joan, the point being that it is in reserves. We've already committed that money, but if council decides not to spend the money, then those reserves can be used for something else.
Yes, correct. Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
No worries. Yep. Any other thoughts for now? Lindsay,
I'll just recap if you're there.
you wouldn't mind?
So we've approved 3 motions as committee, making recommendations to council. The first one is for the Durham Hospital grant request for 5,000. The second one was to put back the Southgate 25th anniversary, which was 25,000, and approve the library position as a part-time position. Those 3 are what have been approved
So far. Yep. Thank you. Barb?
Through you to Lacey, with regard to the new position, that's an increase in service. When is the Melancton agreement up for renewal?
I think it's 4 years, but I'd have to go back and double check. Holly's shaking her head. Yes, it's in 4 years.
Okay. Now, Lindsay, those three motions were not made specifically as amendments to the motion that's on the floor, but it is, can they stand as direction to staff for phase
Yep.
two? Okay.
Yep, so if that's the only three we're doing, then we'll just vote on our original
Original motion.
motion, which was to just have staff proceed.
Yep.
And then once we resolve out of committee, we'll have to pass those four motions then total as council.
Right.
And I can read them off at the time.
Okay. Yep.
My apologies. So this question for Taylor or for Jim, the new growth. When we look at your summary schedule and it says new growth of we budgeted for 400 and there's an additional 300 in growth for a total of 700,000. If new growth assessment is supposed to help spread out the tax base, why does it increase our tax increase? Why isn't it a reduction? And I know I went back to previous budgets. I thought maybe it was a mistake and it's not. Why is it added in?
That's something I'd have to go back and look at.
I mean, it goes back to Councillor Rice's question is when, if new growth is supposed to help spread out the tax burden, why does it actually increase the tax burden? If new assessment is supposed to spread it out.
Yep. Yep. No, I understand. Yeah, I'd have to look at the reasoning for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if we're prepared to vote on the original motion, which is to receive the budget as it's being proposed, then we'll do that. And then, of course, as I say, at phase two, we'll have the opportunity again to discuss it. Jim?
I'm going to make the motion. We look at putting in the micro surfacing on 24 for now. And I think we got to stay on our roads, like Jason said. So I'd like to make a motion to
Okay. To include the microsurfacing for 209,000.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Monica will make that seconded. Any discussion? So that pushes our tax increase up to 9.4-ish, kind of. Okay. Just for reference, I mean, that can change dramatically as we go on.
Still lots
Jim?
of time for cutting, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
for my math, it's 8.58 right now. Because the two projects will be coming from reserve, so just 0.19 at the reduced rate of library hours, and then 1.09 plus the 7.3.
That's why you're the treasurer. I'm not. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Any more discussion on the motion to include the microsurfacing? Although I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Any other changes for now? As I say, we'll have lots of opportunity going forward. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving the proposed budget as amended? That is carried. Okay, let's see. The next report is our recreation manager. No, we'll have to defer it, so the clerk says. So we need a motion to resolve back to council, be it resolved, the committee resolved back to special council
Sorry,
meeting.
Mayor, I need a motion to defer
Oh.
that report, sorry.
Okay, yes, you do. Barb and Jim will move and second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Now the motion to resolve back to council. Barb and Monica. All those in favor? That's carried. Motions resulting for committee of the whole. How would you like to word that, Madam Clerk?
So we need to individually adopt all those, so we
Okay.
can start with the main one here.
Okay, so be it resolved that council will receive the staff report for information, that council directs staff to proceed All necessary administrative actions. That one. 7.1. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, thank you. And Joan will second that. All those in favor? That's carried.
So then our next one, I can read it, Mayor Milne. So the first one is be it resolved that council directs staff to add the Durham Hospital grant request in the amount of $5,000 to be funded from the grants, donations and funding budget, and that council waive policy number 3 to include that grant to be funded by the grants, donations and funding budget.
Thank you. Mover? Barb and Jason, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried.
Next motion, be it resolved that council directs staff to add the Southgate 25th anniversary celebration into the admin budget to be funded equally from the Eco Park Fund and Southgate Solar Fund, sorry.
Thank you. Moved by Barb, seconded by Martin. All those in favor? That is carried.
Third motion, be it resolved that council directs staff to add the new position for the library as a part-time position at $36,342 to the library budget to be funded from general taxation.
Okay, Mover? Joan and Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried.
And last, be it resolved that council directs staff to add the Side Road 24 micro surfacing project at $209,000 to the 2025 draft budget. Under
Somebody
roads.
move that. Jim, seconded by Monica. All those in favor? That is carried. That concludes those.
Yeah, since we deferred Kevin's, we can
Yep.
move on to confirming bylaw.
So we have a confirming bylaw there. Someone care to move that? Jim, thank you. Second by Joan, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. One more motion to adjourn. Barb and Jim, thank you. All those in favor?